As PCA takes ball 4, and one figures that might be the last batter for Liberatore. He walks the left-hander for the second time, and after back-to-back strikeouts, a single and a walk, is going to bring on Hunter Dobbins here in Game 1. Chicago 3, St. Louis 1. The Cubs threatening again. They have 8 hits already here in the opening game of this 4-game series.
The Cubs, they're first or second in the league against left-handed starters. They've done a really nice job. You're going to have to get ahead of them and put yourself in more favorable counts in order to get what you want. So that was the biggest difference for Libby, was just falling behind and being in bad counts.
Alongside Alex and T1 on BK Audio, courtesy of Cardinals TV. That's what it sounded like last night. That's what it looked like last night. It wasn't fun to watch. I didn't enjoy it at all. I just don't know what the case is at this point, Alex. I understand. Okay, you know what? Let me take 2. I understand the case. Matthew Liberatore's strikeout numbers are up. I'm sure the models say this stuff's going to play eventually. It's going to look better. It's going to be something that looks representative of a mid-rotation starter. Maybe you don't love your alternatives. I'm done hearing it. I'm done, man. I can hear all of those things, and I understand. Like, they make compelling arguments. We've said all the time, hey, this team needs more swing and miss, and Matthew Liberatore this season has provided it as much as anybody in their rotation. But at the end of the day, his ERA is basically what Miles Michaelis' ERA was a couple of seasons ago, Alex.
They went through the whole season with Miles Michaelis, though.
They had no alternative.
Well, you have no alternative.
He was making $18 million.
Oof.
So, yeah, they had to stick with him because they had to extract some kind of value from the contract. And he had no value as a reliever. The same thing is not true of Libby. Libby's fastball is terrible as a starter. It's terrible, man. It does not play. He has to rely almost exclusively on his 2 breaking balls. And when he's not throwing those pitches for strikes, he's done. He's got nothing else that he can turn to. And as a starter, that's a huge problem. As a reliever, you might be able to make it work because the fastball plays up a little bit. It's at 97 instead of 93, 94. And if you don't have your fastball on any given day, man, you're going to throw a total of like 20 pitches for the most part. So you can just throw 15 breaking balls if that's what you've got to go with on any given night. You can make that work. As a starter, they will expose you. You get through 3 innings, just like last night, eventually they're going to get you. And it's the hits, it's the power, it's everything. He's just not a starting pitcher. And I understand they don't want to send him down to AAA. They shouldn't. There's nothing to be gained by that. This is not a scenario where he's like got to work on his pitch usage or shaping or modeling or anything like that. It's a matter of, can you get these guys out or not? And the answer at this point, we know, is no, he can't. It's been about 14 months since this guy was a good starting pitcher. And at this point, it appears that was the exception, not the rule. If you want to get quality innings out of Matthew Liberatore, there's a way to do so. We've seen it. It's as a reliever. But you're not getting that out of him right now as a starter. And you saw the comparison of him versus Dobbins last night. Yes, I understand one throws with his right hand and the other throws with his left hand. And that's tougher against this particular lineup. It's not the first time we've seen it against the same lineup where Dobbins looked like the better of the 2 options. I have to continue to advocate for it, and I will continue to do so. It is time to make the switch. Libby should be going to the bullpen sooner rather than later, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you. I said it last week. I made the comparison with McGreevy and Fetty last season, and it strikes once again. You saw it last season when they came out of the All-Star break. Fetty went up against Colorado. He was awful. McGreevy went up against Colorado, and he was great. And I said, what else do you need to know? Well, last night was the perfect experiment for you. You get 3 2/3 of Matthew Liberatore. Sure, the strikeout stuff is there, but when you have strikeout stuff, but you're down by 3 or 4 runs 2 innings in, the strikeout stuff isn't as sexy, right? Like, the strikeout stuff is fun when you're Jacob Mizorowski and your team's in a 0-0 duel until you score. But when you're giving up 3 runs and you've got 6 strikeouts, it's not as enjoyable. Look, Hunter Dobbins ended it and gave up 4 earned runs, but it felt better with Dobbins on the mound. The moment he came in, it kind of felt like you could just sigh a breath of relief. And then from there, it felt like, okay, well, the Cardinals can pull themselves back into it. Now, they didn't, because that's a different story with this offense right now. But you had the perfect experiment last night. It felt like fifth grade science class when you got to do those hypotheses. Regardless, you do two experiments and you try and figure out what the variable is. Well, I know what the variable is. The Cubs, same lineup, Dobbins versus Liberatore. Dobbins is a better pitcher. I got there. Let me just finish, all right?
Yeah.
I got there, all right?
I had some serious questions.
I didn't get a degree in science. I got it in communicating, and I think I just did it. Nailed it.
Some would argue, I don't know if you nailed it, but you.
Oh, I nailed it.
You did what you could, buddy.
I nailed it.
I agreed with where you got to eventually.
Because I got there and I nailed it.
I agree with both of you. I mean, there's just no argument for Matthew Liberatore at this point to be in the rotation. And now, if anything, there's even a better chance to push Dobbins. Not a better chance. There is a better excuse to put Dobbins in his spot because now Dobbins is on turn with the exact same day when Liberatore should be. So they should make the move. This should be the last start that we see from Matthew Liberatore because I said on the Rebel Report last week, look, I'm open-minded to not selling low on Matthew Liberatore at this year's deadline and putting him in the bullpen and seeing if he can have success out of there. He'll cost like $4 million next season because he's not going to get a huge raise through the arbitration system with the year in which he's a negative WAR. And then you look at him and you say, okay, let's see if maybe we can maximize him as a reliever. And if you can, now you're talking about a guy that maybe teams would want at next year's trade deadline if you're not in the race. So I would be willing to put him in the bullpen. Now is better to make the move. You've got Dobbins on turn with him. You can put Dobbins in that spot, and then if you need to figure out a spot for Quinn Matthews, maybe it is you end up trading away Dustin May at this year's deadline.
In his last 33 starts, he's gone 157 innings and has a 5.2 ERA.
Yeah, but what about the strikeouts?
Yeah, but look at his strikeout numbers. It's better than Dustin May's in that time frame.
He's not that young anymore, man. He's about to be 27. He's getting toward the end of his club control. You know, I at a certain point, trust somebody when they tell you who they are. And Matthew Liberatore has told you over the last 33 starts and more than 150 innings who he is. He's a well below league average starter or a well above league average reliever. Which of those two things has more value, not only to the Cardinals, but to the rest of the league? The answer, in my opinion, is very clearly the latter. He is more valuable as a plus reliever that can come in late in these games and get you some valuable outs, especially right now, where they literally do not have that guy. And it sure seems as though they're likely to trade JoJo Romero. And even if they don't, he's out for an unspecified amount of time. So you're going to need somebody in that capacity. They've tried Luis Gastelum to, I would say, at best, mixed results against left-handed hitters. Go ahead and give this a try, man. You know, like, see what it looks like. Find out what you have in Libby as a bullpen arm for the remainder of this season. At least you've got 2 months of runway there. And the other thing that it allows you to do, I'm not even arguing for Quinn Matthews anymore. Whatever. If they disagree with me on that and think that that guy stinks or he's not ready or what, fine. Just put Libby into the bullpen and give Dobbins his starts. They're literally on the same start day now. Like, you've lined it up to where Dobbins should be ready to go the next time that it's a Matthew Liberatore start.
That's kind of what I wonder when they did last night, the way that they did it. It's I just wonder if you're starting to ease him out of that role as a pitcher and just move him into the bullpen, which would make sense if you put Dobbins with him.
Be great. Fine. I'm just at a loss. I'm at a loss for words. I have been frustrated by the way that they have approached the Bryson Motts situation, but at least I get the rationale there. Even if I would personally go about it differently, I understand the rationale. He's got a real walk problem, and that's probably going to get worse, not better, at the big league level. So, all right. Set him aside. The Quinn Matthews thing, I'm frustrated by it. I don't get it. He's got a sub-2 ERA for like 6 weeks now at the AAA level. He is basically the same age as Matthew Liberatore. At a certain point in time, it's time for him to get this opportunity at the big league level, especially as your team is falling out of contention by the day. But if you don't think he's ready, you don't want to make the 40-man move, you want to have the depth, he's your sixth starter, all right, fine. Again, I'll set that aside. You have shown a willingness to give Hunter Dobbins these opportunities the way that you did a year ago with Michael McGreevy. And now, much like the conversation from a year ago with one of the worst starters in Major League Baseball in Eric Fetty, it is time. It is time to make the switch between Fetty and McGreevy, and this year between Dobbins and Liberatore.
Yeah.
I've got nothing else, man. I'm at this point, it's not that I'm mad, I'm just disappointed.
No, you sound a little mad, buddy. You sound a little mad.
I just don't like watching it.
I'll say I don't like watching it, and I'm being driven crazy by the fact that I'm reliving last year. Like it's very. You just change the names, but it's like the same exact thing.
Part of the reason why I wonder though if they just keep him in that spot, because just like last year when you fall out of a playoff contention, what's the point of taking him out of it? You finish off the year and just figure out if he can get going and get on the right track. The problem with that is though, like you see signs of life in like the last 2 starts, and then the Cardinals fall into the same trap they've done before. To where it's hey, but we might have unlocked something. And so now we've got Liberatore and we'll work with them in the offseason. But, I mean, I'm with you guys, but now you're at the point where you're starting to fall out of it. The deadline is approaching, which means they're going to be selling off. At that point, I think they just look at it and say, look, we've gotten this far. Let's see what Libby's got. And if we need him as a bullpen arm, we'll move him to it next year.
I just find no argument to keep him in, even if you're falling out of it. Because you know what happens when teams fall out of it? They give young guys a chance, right? And like to his point, even though he's the same age, like Quinn Matthews, a guy that hasn't got any big league experience, you could put him up here. Same with Dobbins, put him in that spot. Like I can't find an argument to do it outside of maybe they wrote the wrong name down in the starting pitching spot last night, which they did over the weekend.
The list of Cardinals starters in the last 5 years that had a 33 start stretch with this kind of results.
Michaelis.
Libby this year. Palante last year, where it was awful
I remember one him out of the rotation.
That was not fun to watch either.
He had more history of success as a starter, though.
Yeah.
Like there was something you could look back upon and say, hey, at least he did this,
Libby had that in the first 2 months of the season last year.
Not nearly as much success at this level as Andre Palante as a starter. Miles Michaelis in 2024 had this kind of a stretch. Dakota Hudson, Alex's guy, in 2023. Adam Wainwright in 2023, where he was abysmal, truly one of the worst starters that we've seen in recent memory. And Carlos Martinez in 2021. That is the end of the list.
And I think that 2021 stretch might have been like through that June month that we keep referring to.
And I think he turned into a bullpen arm after that.
Yeah, I think
he was a closer after that.
Yeah.
Remember when Waino was broken in 2016-17? Mm-hmm. He had a stretch like this. Luke Weaver in 2018 when they gave up on that experience.
All I'm hearing is these guys turned into really good bullpen
Michael
arms.
Wacha, when he was going through his injuries, had this in 2016. Yeah, these are bullpen arms. Exactly, Alex. You're 100% correct.
Martinez, Waino there for a little bit.
Yep.
Wacha bounced back.
Wacha bounced back. You could send Libby back to the Tampa Bay Rays.
The one caveat is Andre Palante. And I think that's what they're saying is, hey, look, we had to be patient with Andre Palante, and it worked. Yeah, and you had to be patient with Nolan Gorman, and it didn't. Mm-hmm. You had to be patient with Victor Scott II, and it didn't. I understand position player versus
sent Palante
pitcher.
Back down to the minors to work on stuff.
Think about how many times we have talked about Ryan Fernandez. He had to be patient with it. No, he didn't. And it's still not working. A year and a half later for Ryan Fernandez.
Chris Roycroft.
Matt Swanson, Chris Roycroft.
Patience.
Yes, patience does at times pay off. There are also times where you're patient with somebody and they just continue to tell you, yeah, it's not going to get better. This is who I'm going to be if you continue throwing us out there every 5th day. And this is who Matthew Liberatore is. If he goes on elsewhere to have success later in his major league career, and I think he might, he could become Seth Lugo, where he's 32 years old and he goes on to have a late career renaissance as a starting pitcher. That's entirely possible. I will not blame the Cardinals. I promise you, truly. I will not blame the Cardinals for giving up on this experience with him as a starter right now, because you have better alternatives currently than what he could potentially be 3, 4, 5 years from now. Just as I don't blame them for giving up on Carson Kelly. Carson Kelly's a pretty good catcher. He'd be nice to have for the Cardinals right now. I don't blame them for giving up on him at the time. It wasn't the right fit for what they needed at that point in their team build experience. They needed to use him as an asset to get something different. I am one of very few people, I think, that doesn't blame them for the trade that they made to get Sandy Alcantara. I thought it was to trade Sandy Alcantara for Marcell Ozuna. It was the right move at the time. It didn't work, but eventually you've got to make the move, man. You can't continue to operate scared. And I think right now when it comes to Matthew Liberatore, they're operating as if they're afraid that they're going to be wrong.
Wow. And that is the opposite effect of what I applauded the Cardinals for earlier this season, when every time they made an aggressive move on the offensive side, you looked at it and you're like, damn, like even if this doesn't work, they try to make a move to fix the problem. Whereas this one, it's Fetty 2.0. You kept the problem happening, and it lost you some opportunities to stay in the playoff race. Now, I know you're still in it, but the way that they're performing beyond the pitching side of things, but the way that the pitching side of things has been performing, it feels like you're out of it, and it's stuck with the guy maybe 3 or 4 starts too long.
Starvin Marvin says, this is on Heim, right? Well, yeah. Absolutely.
I like that high pitch. Well, yeah.
I mean, who else would it be on?
Ollie, he didn't manage it right.
He's the one that is in charge of the roster, and he ultimately decides who's in the rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Ollie decides how long he stays in the game, but...
You saw how fast he got him out of there yesterday.
Yeah. It is, hey, this is your rotation. You operate as you would like to. This is your bullpen. You operate with him how you'd like to. But, yeah, this is Chaim Bloom's roster. There's nobody else that the buck stops with him. And I had heard last year, we'll just go ahead and mention this part. Like, I had heard last year, it wasn't just John Mozeliak who was saying, no, we got to keep throwing Eric Fetty out there. Like, that was a joint decision between everybody in the front office. And included in said decision, I believe, was Chaim Bloom. So the Fetty decision is also reflective, potentially, of the way that this team will operate in the Chaim Bloom era. You can make of that what you will, but I think that clearly is being repeated right now, where it takes a while on some of these decisions, especially it appears with the rotation, to make the move, to make the switch between the guy that's earned that opportunity and the next guy that's knocking down the door to potentially get said opportunity. All right. I apologize.
You weren't mad, though. You're just disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every time my dad's been disappointed in the past, he goes on a rant for 18 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
It was only 15 and a half. Alongside Alex and T-Bud, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You can check us out on YouTube, as always, at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. I promise it will not just be me talking throughout the show. We've got Jim Bowden joining us coming up at 12 o'clock. Derrick Goold, our Cardinals beat writer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and the insider that joins us each and every week will join us in the 1 o'clock hour. And our guy, Jeremy Rutherford, at 11:30 as well. But coming up next, are we about to see a shortstop carousel at this year's trade deadline? We'll discuss it here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Just saw a piece from the Seattle Times. Mariners' piggyback plan appears over as Luis Castillo and Emerson Hancock have seen their trade buzz heat up, according to Adam Jude, who is a Seattle Mariners beat writer out there. He says it's increasingly likely at least one of those will ultimately be dealt at this year's trade deadline. He adds Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Brian Wu, and Bryce Miller. They ain't going anywhere.
Son of a biscuit!
And it is increasingly unlikely that the Mariners would trade both Luis Castillo and Emerson Hancock.
So,
if you're interested in one of them, I would assume it's Hancock. And if you want to get him, you're going to probably have to pay up. I don't think he's a guy that I would target, but wanted to pass that along as some deadline news here on BK and Ferrario. Speaking of deadline news, Alex, it sure seems as though the shortstop position is the one that's generating the most buzz right now. There's Zach Neto out there for the Angels. He's got club control. He's a pretty good power hitter. His defensive numbers are generally terrible in his career at the shortstop position, but he can hit for power. And, hey, if you can hit, we'll find a place for you to play, and that place is the shortstop position. It's not just him, though. It's C.J. Abrams, who's having a career year right now, and I really don't understand why the Nationals would trade him, but whatever. Alex, do you think that the Cardinals should be in on any of this, whether it's now or in the offseason, as part of the conversation? Oh, and Jeremy Pena is another one that's name is kind of being rumored out there as well. I don't think he ultimately gets dealt.
I don't think so. And it's just because I feel like the Cardinals are an identity team. And if you get rid of Mason Wynn for one of these other shortstops, C.J. Abrams aside, because I think he kind of mirrors with more power of what Mason Wynn is.
What I would give for him.
Oh, I'm telling you. He's
been a terrible defender, too, though. Sorry.
Has he? I feel like you're just...
Screw defense. Let's hit home run.
I mean, it feels like what you need right now offensively, but I don't know, just the ballpark that they play in and for what pitching they still go with McGreevy and Palante and Leahy for how they've worked. I feel like if you move on from Mason Wynn and go try and find one of those shortstops, you're going to lack defensively. And how fast are we going to be complaining as Cardinals fans about, well, the defense is terrible if you have the offense, and what happens when the offense goes cold? So, I mean, look, I'd be interested in guys like C.J. Abrams or Pena. I don't know how realistic it is to go after them. I think it's going to be too cost expensive for the Cardinals. And I just don't know if losing the defense at shortstop for how this team likes to build is going to benefit them long term.
Yeah, I would be sniffing around these waters here to see what it would cost and be having these conversations, both for the now, for potentially the deadline, but I think what would be more likely is for the offseason to see what it would cost, because I think they should be exploring a potential upgrade at the shortstop position, because I think there's a chance the bat for Mason Wynn's only going to get worse from here, and it's not that great now. And I get it. He's great defensively. They're still missing at least one more bat in their lineup, in my opinion. And if you take a little bit of a step back defensively, I'm okay with that, as long as it brings a bat that can really impact your lineup, whether that be a Neto, an Abrams, or a Jeremy Pena, though I agree with you, BK. I don't think he's going anywhere. It sounds like the Astros are probably going to buy. But
it could be an offseason addition, though, free agency.
Oh, I like the way you think.
Maybe you want to. 29 years old, free agent seems unlikely, but technically.
Doesn't sound like it's happening.
I would be exploring this, not in terms of like we have to get a trade done now because you're not in that spot as an organization, but they should definitely be around these conversations trying to figure out, okay, how can we improve the club? Because I wouldn't lock Mason Wynn as a part of this core moving forward. He's a nice complementary piece, but complementary pieces are always the pieces you're looking to improve upon.
A lot of people bringing up what I would say. If you're going to do this, I think they're third base additions.
Mm-hmm. Third base or second base if you're moving Weatherholt over, maybe.
To third. I'm saying keep Mason Wynn.
Oh,
use
I see what
other
you're saying.
assets
To go get a third
potentially
baseman.
build here. And Mason Wynn becomes like a true defense-first shortstop. Yeah. And now you're able to cover for some of his lack of offense by getting a third baseman that's contributing the way that you need him to. Yeah. I think that's a lot of what we're seeing here. I think Mason Wynn's offense being exposed is not necessarily a problem for the Cardinals. I think the problem for them is that you have a lack of offense from shortstop, from third base, and from center field right now, and at times from catcher. And when you've got 3 or 4 positions where it's defense first on any given day, that's where you start to become a bit of a liability, especially when one of those spots, like, I don't think it's reasonable to expect more from Nathan Church. I don't think it's reasonable to expect much more from Blaze Jordan or from Pedro Pajes / Jimmy Crooks at this point in his career. It is reasonable to hope for more, though, from Mason Wynn, and that's where the frustration comes in. Well, like, if you could sign Jeremy Pena in an offseason next year, that guy's 29 years old, and he's an awesome hitter. And if he was willing to move over to third base, I think he could be a really good player there for you and improves the offense in a meaningful way. C.J. Abrams has mostly been awful as a defender at shortstop. Would that potentially be a little better at third? Possibly, because you're asking him to do less. And the bat profiles as such where he could be a plus asset there as well. So if you're going to make a move like this, my point would be, I think that he's probably, or these guys would be more in line for a third base position as opposed to shortstop. I don't think you're looking to upgrade right now from Mason Wynn personally.
That's where I'd be targeting. I'd be targeting the areas that I'm most efficient in. I'd be looking to fix third base or looking to fix center field right now. And if I'm going to go out there and sell these assets to go after a Zach Neto or a C.J. Abrams, that's a lot of money or prospect profile that you're putting in a deal like that. Man, go fix third base, have one guy that is going to hit 220 for you, but be excellent defensively. Fix your other problems in your organization rather than trade a shortstop and then say, well, what are we going to do? Because now defense at shortstop isn't good.
Can I ask you about a guy that I think actually fits their plans a little bit more?
Yeah.
Because I don't think any of these guys are realistic for the Cardinals that we've brought up so far. I don't think they're trading for Neto. I don't think they're trading for C.J. Abrams. And I don't think Jeremy Pena is
It's like
getting
talking
moved.
to Heim in the room.
Oh, realism, am I right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have
Tell me
a
Libby's gonna be in the
former
rotation.
top 15 overall prospect in Major League Baseball. 2 times he was a part of the Futures game. A former top 5 overall selection in the Major League Baseball draft. He's 23 years old. He can play all across the diamond, specifically on the infield. And in AAA, as recently as last year, hit 270 with a decent amount of pop, 820 OPS. And that's kind of what he was throughout his minor league career. Okay? I did not tell you what he's done at the major league level for a reason.
Good.
He's been awful so far at the major league level. I'm talking about Marcelo Meyer, a second base / third base option for the Boston Red Sox. It appears they're looking to upgrade from him. They are in every one of these rumors about the guys that we just talked about. They would really like to add somebody that can play the shortstop position and be a long-term answer for them there. Marcelo Meyer so far as a big leaguer has hit 225 with basically no pop. He's also been a below-average defender thus far in his major league career. But as I said, he's 23 years old. He's still extremely young, and the upside is there. Would you be interested in trading? I don't know what it would take for you, but maybe it is Newt, O'Brien, and JoJo for Marcelo Meyer. Something like that. I don't know if that's too much, but just like in a theoretical sense, you're trading assets to go out there and acquire a young player that you think fits into your core long term. And by the way, was drafted, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, by Chaim Bloom in Boston.
I was thinking Crooks or Bernal instead of
Sure.
Newbar that one because weren't they interested in the catcher? But regardless, that package you just proposed to me, yeah, I'll do it. I mean, I don't know. It feels like a lot, and I think people would be upset if you're putting Newbar in that because maybe some would assume that you're going to get a big return for Lars Newbar himself. I know he hasn't been great. I think you are in a position to where you go for upside.
Maybe it's Leo Bernal plus Riley O'Brien for Marcelo Meyer.
I would do that right now. I mean, you've got a ton of catchers. Bernal, I don't know, plays into your future as much as if you go out there and try and get a third baseman and work with them. I mean, I'd rather them take a shot at that than just stick with all of these catchers and hope one of them sticks and none of them really plays into your future. You've got a hole at third base, and as much as I've liked Blaze Jordan, you need to upgrade that spot.
I'm fascinated to hear T-Bone's thoughts.
I'll take a chance on it.
He's 23 years old and he's been terrible at the major league level.
Yeah, I'm not touching him with a 10-foot pole. He's not in my return package. You kidding me? This guy can't play. I have no interest in him. I mean, no defense, can't hit,
You
like
full
no
Craig
thanks.
Button can't play.
Yeah,
Can't
no,
play.
I'm good. I don't want him in. Now, if he's going to be like, if there's another piece in this, like if there was one of their high-end like pitching arms that they've kind of been floating around there that are kind of in the lower levels, okay, maybe then we can put him in this package. But like, he is not the headliner for me in a return. I don't have much interest in him at all.
Okay. I was just curious if that's the kind of player, because I do think he's been considered in some of these packages of, hey, the Red Sox would float Marcelo Meyer's name in order to upgrade their major league roster right now. I think you're going to get a lot of this from teams across the league of like guys that are currently in the big leagues because there's not a whole lot of teams that are true sellers or true like all-in buyers the way that we typically would see. I just find him to be an intriguing option that hasn't quite figured it out at the major league level, but the ceiling is still there if you're willing to bet on it at the low point. And with the Heimblum history there, I think he's interesting.
I'd take a shot on it. I mean, what other options you got? Blazing.
Jesus Baez like 2 years from now.
Yeah, and Nolan Gorman again next year. Like,
I mean, this guy's basically been Blaze offensively.
Yeah, but he's got a higher upside.
He's been Nolan Gorman basically.
Yeah, but he's got higher upside, and I like the upside.
I don't know that he does. I mean, I think all we're talking about is the fact that he was taken like 4th overall.
Yeah, that's higher upside.
He was a top 15 prospect as recently as a couple of years ago.
And now he's gotten to the big leagues and has been exposed mightily.
So far.
And though, as we just talked about in the last segment, of all the times that the Cardinals, I was just about to bring him up, as much as we've talked about, hey, the Cardinals' patience has paid off like once out of their last 10 tries with Walker, most of these guys don't end up figuring it out through that patience.
But what if they do?
And
good
to be
for
fair,
the team that does it. I wouldn't do it.
Why not try it?
To be fair, a lot of the guys that have failed with the Red Sox have gone on to have quite a bit of success elsewhere. You know, and that a lot of that is on the position player side.
And how much have we talked about we trust Heim's ability to identify talent and whatnot? Maybe this is just an organization that doesn't know how to get the best out of them.
It might be. It might be.
If you're giving me option A, which is Blaze Jordan again next year, or Nolan Gorman again next year, or Ramon Urias, Brian Torres, and you're giving me option B of saying this guy with the upside, I think I'd take a shot at the upside.
Here are some of the players that were ranked prospect pedigree-wise around Marcelo Meyer, and we got to get to JR on the other side here in just a moment. Jackson Merrill, James Wood, Pete Crow Armstrong, Colton Cowser, Kyle Harrison, Roman Anthony. These guys are mostly behind him on the prospect list. Jacob Mizorowski. He was a legit prospect. This is not just some throw-in guy.
T-Bone.
These are guys that were right around his range.
Fail.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, Jeremy Rutherford here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Universal Windows Direct. Cardinals dropped game 1 of their 4-game set at home against the Cubs last night, 7-3. Game 2 will be tonight, 6:45 will be first pitch. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Universal Windows Direct. You'll be saying, I love my windows.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, happy to go out to the Kiley and Thompson hotline to be joined by our friend and the Blues insider for The Athletic. He's Jeremy Rutherford, joining us as he does each and every Tuesday. JR, what's going on, man? How you doing today?
Doing good. Hey, shout out to everybody working outside. And how about mailmen in particular? My dad, 30-plus years at the Postal Service. And days like these, I remember years ago, I would call him and I would say, Dad, it was kind of getting a little hot here at the house where I'm working, 72 degrees. I just turned it down to 68. He's like, you son of a gun.
Dude, we got a message the other day from our lawn care provider, and they were like, hey, we're really sorry, but we're going to have to bump everything back a day. I was like, hey, man, please do not come to do my yard today. We're good.
Shout out to all those pest control workers, too, right, JR?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Those are the days when you knew you had to go inside for pest control and you just, lingered around the house a little bit longer.
Yeah, I didn't know it. I just wanted to be a sports writer. That's all I ever wanted. I was carrying the Post-Dispatch sports page in my back pocket when I was about 10 or 11 years old. So I knew that I wanted to do that. Little did I know then I wanted to do it because I could stay indoors. And then I didn't know at the time, but cover a sport where they were on ice and they had to keep it pretty frigid.
Genius, JR, just like me.
We've started doing the skating lessons with our little guy, and it's been nice. It allows us something. We get out of the house,
Yep.
we do something active, but it's indoors, and I don't have to worry about it being miserably hot as we play baseball outside or something.
Yeah, I see your pictures on the social media. Luka, first round pick, 2041?
Yeah,
Well,
somewhere around
that's
there.
not going to happen, JR, because as we've learned from BK, he will tell Luka by the time he turns 16 that that's an irrational dream and you need to have a backup plan to go into.
That is correct. It's
Yeah.
important to have backup
BK will
plans.
make sure his kid knows, I don't believe in you for that, you're going to do something else.
JR, I'm guessing Robert Thomas never had a backup plan, though.
What a
and
transition.
It worked out for him to get to the NHL level, and now he's a #1 center at the NHL level for the St. Louis Blues. You had a really good piece on him the other day over at The Athletic on what fatherhood has been like for Robert Thomas, what the past, 6 months or so have been like for him in the midst of some of those trade rumors. What did you learn in your conversation with Robert Thomas here in St. Louis?
Yeah, he didn't need a backup plan for sure with the way his career's unfolding. Hey, and speaking of heat, so we met one day last week, and I remember texting him once or twice before we met at the park. Are you sure you want to do this? It's 95 degrees. And
JR was trying to get out of it.
yeah, I was the one trying to get out
JR's
of
like,
it.
we can do this over the phone, Robert. It's fine.
Yeah, you're the one with the toddler. And he said, no, she wants to get up to the park, so it's fine. So, yeah, it was fun to hang out with he and his wife, Jen, and their daughter, 2-year-old daughter, Tatum. And as we found out when we got there, their dog, Moose, and just kind of chat about family life, being a dad, and getting this Blues team back on track. The one thing that, not just in that interview, but ever since the trade rumors going back to March, that just really sticks with me with Robert Thomas, is that he believes more than most people you talk to about this team being able to contend sooner than later. And so when you look at that Blues team last year and you look at the big picture the past couple of years, I think a lot of people believe that you're in store for a 2, 3, maybe even 4-year situation. And Robert Thomas has never, ever felt like that. And that's what he tried to convey at the trade deadline to Blues management. That's what he said to Alexander Steen in their comments, their conversations this offseason. And he said that they are aligned now. Like, talking to Alexander Steen, they laid out what their goals are, and they said they really matched up. And so you look at what the Blues have done this summer. They've made some additions like a Mason McTavish, like a Connor McMichael, that, lead you to believe they really do feel like, even though those are guys that are in that age range that can allow them to compete for the next couple of years, they're players who can help them compete right away. And so I give it to Robert Thomas when a lot of people are saying, hey, the Blues are in for a few years of this. He's a guy who said, I think we're closer than that.
Well, and Jared, that was the part of the article that really stuck out to me. And I told the guys this, that, when I read that piece of it, I thought back to the conversation that Doug Armstrong has talked about, to where, after they traded Paul Stastny, Alexander Steen was not happy with the team. And he went and sat down with Doug and basically said, look, I need to know where this team is headed because I want to win. And they had their conversation, they hashed it out, and then I think it was 2 off seasons later, they brought in O'Reilly and all of those moves to win the Stanley Cup. I'm not saying that conversation is going to lead to that, but it just kind of I found it very interesting how it mirrored each other, of now Steen's in Doug's shoes and Thomas is in Steen's shoes, of saying, hey, where's this headed? Am I a part of it? And now you kind of wonder if they start to do the same thing that Doug did after he talked with Steen.
That's a great point, Alex, that I didn't think of. I remember that from several years ago, but I didn't put it together in this context with Robert Thomas. And so you got to believe then, based on, putting those two scenarios together, that Alexander Steen has to have a lot of respect for a guy like Robert Thomas in his shoes, saying, hey, look, and maybe he didn't say, you were in the same boat and said the same thing to Army that I'm saying to you. But I think Alexander Steen can put that together and realize, hey, I was in this guy's shoes. And listen, there's a lot made about a guy who played in the league, now in that general manager chair. Does it work? It does in some situations. It doesn't in others. It didn't work in Detroit with Steve Yzerman. So I think it's a case-by-case situation. But that's the one thing you're going to get with Alexander Steen moving forward in terms of his relatability to the players, what's going on in the locker room. Doug Armstrong had a ton of success, and he wasn't a player, so it can be done both ways. But I think when we hear stories about Alexander Steen and what guys think about him, I think to the quote that Robert Thomas had in the story is that, he, listening to Alexander Steen, it just kept polling me. It was a constant poll of, this is who we want running the team. This is the guy who you want to go play for. And I think that we're going to hear that more and more from players who have these conversations like Robert Thomas did with Alexander Steen.
Did you walk away from that chat feeling like, JR, he's going to be the next captain of the Blues?
Yeah, in fact, when we're sitting on a bench at the park, and I said to him, all right, well, I know you've talked about this before several times, but I got to ask it, for this article. When you're talking to Steen, did that captaincy get brought up? And as he started to answer, I said, so in other words, the press conference is next Monday. And he kind of laughed about that. And I got the impression that he probably wasn't telling me everything he knew about that. His comment was that, I don't know how that's going to unfold, but it'd be something that would be really meaningful to me. I just can't picture these two guys sitting in a room talking about, hey, I want to be a big leader of this thing. Okay, we want to keep you. You're a part of this. I really think we're close. Okay, I agree with you. Let's make some moves and let's get this thing back on track right away. And then it ending with Robert Thomas, not being in a position to be the next captain of this team. To me, everything is pointing that way. Honestly, I'd be surprised if it didn't happen. But even after talking to Robert Thomas, nothing in concrete there, nothing where the Blues have said they're for sure going to name a captain and he's going to be the guy. It's just that the impression that you get talking to Robert Thomas and how big a part he wants to be of this thing, I think he would be your next guy.
JR, final question that I've got for you. There's been some rumors, I'll call it the speculation maybe as well, about Marchenko from the Columbus Blue Jackets and whether or not he will ultimately be dealt in the coming days, weeks, or months. What is your understanding, if there is one, on the Blues' potential interest in that kind of a player, and how do you think you would fit in here?
Yeah, so when I saw the report, and you got to be careful with a lot of reports that come out of, Russia, and there's two teams, and, I ton of respect for Aaron Portzline, my colleague who covers the Columbus Blue Jackets at The Athletic. He's done it for, 25, 30 years. He put out a story that said that there's nothing really to that, but whenever you see something like that, I saw two teams. Okay, maybe the Blues could be one of these teams. You always have to have your radar up. But guys, honestly, like, how many times is there a report about a guy 23 to 26 years old and your first thought doesn't go to the Blues? Like, that's what it's come to now, right? So I think any time there's a talented player like Marchenko, 26 years old he is, with his production so far, why wouldn't the Blues make that phone call and at least see what the price is? So, again, situation where nothing concrete in terms of, yes, the Blues are in on this, but as Portsline reported, he hears that there's been no phone calls on him recently, and maybe that's because teams are aware of the price and they're holding off. And as Portsline wrote, that doesn't mean that there can't be anything the rest of this offseason in terms of some conversations with that. But, Marchenko appears to want out. He's going to cost a lot, and there's going to be a lot of interest. So if the Blues are interested, that's going to be a situation where they're battling a lot of other teams.
Well, JR, we'll be paying attention to all your reporting, especially if anything potentially comes out on that front. We always appreciate the time here on the show. People should go read his piece on Robert Thomas. It's over at The Athletic. If you have not subscribed yet, you might as well do so, especially when it comes to a piece like this. All the best, JR. We'll talk with you again next week, man.
Yep, thanks, boys.
Got it. That's Jeremy Rutherford joining us as he does each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Questions and answers coming up next. Hey, in about 10 minutes, we'll be talking to Jim Bowden, former Major League Baseball general manager, get his thoughts on the trade deadline. Stay tuned for that. Right now, questions and answers from the 636. Do you guys think the Cardinals should consider moving up the fences about 5 or 10 feet in the offseason? The ball just doesn't seem to carry very well at Busch.
I mean, yeah, I'd consider it. I just guess it depends on how they want to build their team and identity still. I mean, it seems like they like the defensive first mentality, and if that's the case, it's a good ballpark to play in.
Yeah, I would consider it at this point. I know they've talked about it in the past, but it's the worst home run ballpark in all of Major League Baseball this season, and it's by a pretty wide margin. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, why do you think Walker is still batting second for the Cardinals, and do you agree with the decision? He's your best hitter.
Yeah, your best hitter usually hits in that spot because it's the most at-bats.
Give him more opportunities to go up to the plate. You've got Burleson behind him. I've got no problem with their 1-2-3 right now. The problem is the guy that's hitting fourth isn't hitting.
Yeah. Yeah, because if Herrera was hitting, I think we'd be talking about Walker still hitting in the cleanup spot.
Yeah, I think ideally you'd like to have Walker more in that cleanup spot because you're getting those guys on base in front of him, but right now they have to do that, so I have no issue with what they're doing.
From the 314, Alex, this is for you. Would you trade Neighbors for Marchenko?
Straight up? Yeah. I think you're upgrading. It's going to be more expensive, but yeah, I would. I think you're getting a 40-goal scorer in return.
314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Coming up here in about 15 minutes, we'll get into Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it on 101 ESPN. But next, always a pleasure to be joined by the former Major League Baseball general manager, Jim Bowden, as he discusses the outlook for the Cardinals at this year's trade deadline. Jim Bowden next here on 101 ESPN. Former Major League Baseball general manager, now writer over at The Athletic and analyst on MLB Network Radio, Jim Bowden joins us via the Callier and Thompson hotline. That's Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. Appreciate the time as always, Jim. How you doing on what is going to be an interesting week leading to the trade deadline?
Yeah, Brandon, I love this time of year. It's like a holiday for me, right? I love the trade deadline. It's a lot of fun. I stay engaged with all the GMs in both leagues, and this has been one of the more fascinating lead-ups to a trade deadline than I've ever remembered, because I never remember being a week away and having 23 teams within 4.5 games of a wild card berth. Never seen that before. Yeah, we only have 6 or 7 legitimate sellers. Everybody else has some kind of shot. So I think it's going to be fun to see what actually happens. I mean, we could have an exciting deadline over the last 24, 48 hours beforehand, or we could have a total dud. It could be somewhere in between, but I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Jim, on the Cardinals front, they're only a game and a half back right now of the wild card standings. I understand that, but given the way they've been playing over really the last 30 games, we have all been talking locally as though they're trending toward becoming a seller, as I think they kind of always intended to be. Is that your read on their situation?
No, I think that would be a huge mistake if you do that. I mean, you're in the middle of a race. You're a game and a half out. You have one good week and all of a sudden you're in the wild card and a chance for the playoffs. Look, I think you owe it to the young players on this team. You owe it to Jordan Walker. You owe it to Mason Wynn. You owe it to these young guys to try to get to October baseball. Heck, you owe it to the fans in the outfield with the tarps off. I mean, the energy that's finally back there in that ballpark. Let's take advantage of it. Let's try to get them a series in October, even if it is a wild card series, and then you go home. When you're this close, yeah, I'm not a fan of selling. Now, I'm not a fan of sitting here and trading top prospects. Like, I understand this is a build, and we don't want to set that back because this isn't the year we're going to be celebrating a World Series in St. Louis. But I think celebrating a playoff spot is something that the fans deserve, the players deserve. I'd love to see it happen. So I would like to see the Cardinals buy. I'd like to see them go get a bat to try to ignite this offense. I'd like to see them go get another starting pitcher. And I'm talking about a controllable bat, a controllable starter, someone that can help you win in 27 and 28 as well. But I'm not a fan of selling a game and a half out of the playoffs. I think it's a huge mistake. And I don't care that we've got parity in the game. I don't care that bad teams are going to get in the playoffs. I don't care about that. A playoff series is a playoff series.
So you kind of talked about it a little bit there, Jim, but diving deeper into it, what does that look like to you, taking advantage of where you're at and going out there and seeking after some bats or some arms to help this team?
Yeah, it doesn't mean I want to trade any top prospects, right? Joshua Baez is going nowhere. Rodriguez is going nowhere. I'm not interested in that. But how can I make this team better? Is there a trade that makes sense? For example, is there a chance I can go get one of those really good young starters with Seattle that's controllable that I could put near the top of the rotation? Because they definitely need a right-handed bat. Can I trade Herrera in a deal with a reliever to get a Bryce Miller or a George Kirby or someone that I can put in this rotation for this year and going forward? It's that kind of deal. Maybe it's a contender-to-contender deal. Is there a way that I can get a young bat, someone that can ignite the middle of this lineup somewhere? And look, I'm okay if it's a rental if I don't have to give up any of my top 5 or 6 prospects. If I'm trading prospects 10 to 30, if I have to trade a couple of mid-level prospects to go get a rental bat even, okay, that's fine. Again, I'm not going to do anything that's going to affect 2027 and beyond, but I'm also going to make every effort I can to improve this team for this year as well as in future years.
If the Cardinals decided to go in a different path, Jim, and I know you're saying you think it would be a mistake to do so, but if they decide, you know what, there's very few sellers in the market, there are very few players available in the market, we're going to make some of ours available. What do you think the value would be for a guy like Dustin May if he was dealt at this year's deadline?
Yeah, I mean, he's a rental. I mean, my question, I'll ask you back. How do you rank May compared to the other options out there? And of course, I'm not talking about Derrick Goold, but how do you compare him with Kevin Gausman and Reed Detmers and Jose Soriano and Robbie Ray, just to name a few guys, Freddie Peralta, Clay Holmes? Where does Dustin May rank for them? Do you guys view him as better than all of those guys, or do you view them as probably somewhere in the middle? Because I'm probably somewhere in the middle, which means the return's going to be okay, but is the return going to be good enough to really improve 27 and beyond? That's the question I have to ask you, because I'm not sure it will.
I would also ask this, Jim, and I'm curious your perspective on it. We've been talking about it here locally. He's a guy that, at least theoretically speaking, could receive the qualifying offer this offseason if the Cardinals were to keep him here for the remainder of the season. Is that something you would do if you were in Chaim Bloom's shoes? If you did decide to keep him, would you be willing to place a qualifying offer on Dustin May, knowing that he might accept it going into this offseason?
Yeah, I don't really like that concept, but look, I am supportive of the idea of trying to extend him and talking to him. My understanding is Dustin May is really happy in St. Louis. He really likes the team, the organization, loves the fan base and everything, and wants to be there. So I tend to try to work a deal out. the qualifying offer is a difficult gamble just because, the dollars are such a high number. We don't even know what the qualifying offer is going to be next year. So to me, that would be a risky question that I would rather answer after I watch him pitch in August and September, or maybe at the beginning of October. I'd rather answer that then. It would be borderline. Like, I was surprised last year that the Milwaukee Brewers offered Brandon Woodruff the qualifying offer. 2 years ago, I was surprised the Reds offered Nick Martinez the qualifying offer. I wouldn't have done either one. Dustin May is kind of borderline because it's, do you want to overpay for one more year of May if you can't sign him to a long-term deal? And what are the other options if I allocate the money elsewhere? So it becomes more difficult to ask, and I think how he pitches in August and September would help me answer that. If I had to answer it today, my answer would be no, I would not be willing to do that.
Jim, going down the same path of if the Cardinals view it as selling, it does seem like from our perspective, the bullpen is an area that is pretty fruitful for other teams around Major League Baseball. I am curious just where you think their bullpen arms that they could sell is at, and if they could get the return that would justify them sending those pieces out.
Yeah, I've always been a fan. If you don't think you're a contending team, I'm always a fan of trading the bullpen, the relievers. I mean, we saw Minnesota do it at a ridiculous pace last July, like we've never seen before, and totally ruined their chances of winning any baseball games. But they did it, and I understood it. The New York Mets are about to do it. You're about to see, Luke Weaver and Brooks Raley, AJ Minter, maybe even Oscar Brozován. You're about to see all of them get traded from the Mets. They're going to do what the Twins did a year ago. So, look, I get the concept. I'm just scratching my head on why we're having this discussion on a team that's a game and a half out of the playoffs. That's the part I'm not getting. Like, I get why the Twins did it last year. I get why the Mets are going to do it this year. I'm not understanding why you want to tear this team apart when you're in a place you weren't expecting to be in the middle of a pennant race here at the end of July. So I view it differently. But that being said, look, I think that every GM, every president, every owner has to do their due diligence. And I would listen on every single player and see if there was ever a deal put in front of me. So if someone wants to come get Dustin May or they want to come get my bullpen, I'll listen. I mean, if there's a trade out there that's going to make me better either this year or in future years that, to me, I can win trades, I'm always going to be open-minded to that. I mean, I know the Cardinals aren't in a position where they're anywhere close to Dodgers and Brewers level teams, and you've got a little ways to go to get there. But I like the progress that's been made. But I'd be careful this time of year not to knock down a team that's a game and a half out, because it not only costs you the rest of this year and costs you season ticket sales in the offseason, but you all of a sudden get the players pissed and upset, and all that goodwill that you're creating goes away really fast if you start to do that. So I'd be very careful, to be honest.
Jim Bowden joining us here on 101 ESPN. I love the differing perspective, Jim, because it provides us kind of a different look than what we've all seen here locally. I think most Cardinals fans, just to give you the perspective, most Cardinals fans came into the season with very low expectations. They were told this is a rebuild. The plan is to have the long term in mind, and that's kind of been the through line for everything. So they came into the season expecting to be sellers. The team was better than they expected for the first couple of months, and I think a lot of fans, I don't want to speak for all of them, but a lot of them were waiting on the other shoe to drop. When is this pitching going to go back to becoming a pumpkin? When is the offense going to revert back to the offense that we've seen for much of the past couple of seasons? And over the last month, we've seen some of that, where the pitching has been up and down and the bullpen's been pretty bad for a couple of weeks now. And the offense has been awful for about a month now, for the most part, outside of Alec Burleson and Jordan Walker. And so I think a lot of fans see that and say to themselves, all right, well, we saw what we needed to see. It's been a, generally speaking, successful year. You got some positive returns on the young guys. Now it's time to do what they always expected to do, go get the best return possible for those guys. But I do want to go down your line of thinking where they could potentially buy and improve this roster, because this NL wildcard race after the top two teams is kind of awful. Most of these teams are also kind of in the same spot that the Cardinals find themselves in right now. Do you think they have the assets outside of giving up the top prospects to truly improve this roster at the trade deadline? Do you think that's possible for them?
I mean, I don't think you have the group that's going to go out there and make that big, franchise-changing trade for Derrick Goold or Mason Miller. No, I don't think you have that. But I think you have enough prospects. I think you have enough on your major league roster to perhaps land a Reed Detmers. I think you have enough in there. to land a bat. You got to be creative. And again, I'm not thinking that the Cardinals should sit there and, trade any top prospects. Like, no, that's not the point here. But, tweak this team, get another bat, get another starting pitcher to try to tweak this team enough. You're a game and a half out, bottom line. I don't care if you were better in May than June. I don't care if you were better in April than now. I mean, this team has won more games and is closer to the playoffs than anybody anticipated, including me, in March. I said in March this would be a last-place team. I didn't think you had the pitching to be able to be sitting here in the position. I was wrong. I'm glad Jordan Walker had his breakout year. It's been a lot of fun watching that. That's exciting. I love that Alec Burleson has proven to people that last year was real, that he's, these are two real good building blocks here. But again, I want to keep building this thing, and I want to tweak it to try to get better and to try to win. So I'm not looking for big deals either way, not buying or selling, but just keep building. I mean, you still have a strong farm system. You have some real talent that's coming in the pipeline that should be there, hopefully, sometime next year. A big power outfield bat, impact catcher, both coming, which is pretty exciting. So, yeah, let's just keep adding to this. That's my opinion. Not sitting there and selling like all of a sudden you're the Rockies or the Giants or the Mets or the Angels or the Royals right now. That's not what you guys are. So just because you had a bad month, don't get emotional on the bad month. Maybe your August is going to be like your May was, and you'll have a totally different opinion entering September. But the unfortunate part is you got to make the decision today. And I think front offices make mistakes when they get emotional and they put too much emphasis on recency bias. That's when you make mistakes in deciding whether you buy or sell.
Jim, what do you think the cost would be for a guy like Reed Detmers?
So the great thing about Reed Detmers' name, and I'm glad that's the name that you cherry picked there, is because John Mozeliak knows your farm system. John Mozeliak had a lot to do with your farm system. He knows your players inside and out, and he's got some favorite players in that organization that Chaim Bloom is not married to. So I just feel like between Chaim and John, who have that great close relationship, there's a deal to be made. And Mo, walking into the Angels, can't trust the Angels evaluators. Look where the team has been the last 7 years. He can't walk in there and trust any of those judgments. And being out of the game, even since opening day, puts him in a position behind the eight ball. So how is he going to make great evaluations and trades? The one team he can do that with is St. Louis. The one team where he knows the farm system back and front and familiar with it is St. Louis. So even though he doesn't get your top prospects in the deal, he knows some guys that he likes better than Chaim Bloom does. That's where the package comes in for Detmers. I can't give you the names because I don't know who those guys are, but I'm talking about prospects somewhere in the maybe 9 to 16 range. There's got to be a couple of players there that Mo will take for a Reed Detmers. So I think it's two really good prospects that aren't your best prospects that makes it work. And by the way, then you control Detmers for 2.5 years. You're not trading Detmers to try to win this year. You're trading for Detmers to win this year and the next 2 years. That's why it makes sense.
Jim, I want to go back to the Ivan Herrera in Seattle hypothetical situation you brought up, because I just saw a ton of our listeners react to that. Do you think that's something that the Cardinals should entertain, and would that be the piece that could get them that controllable pitcher, whether it's from Seattle or elsewhere?
Yeah, I want to build starting pitching in St. Louis, right? I want to get a top of the rotation there. That's how I sleep at night, right? So when you guys had Chris Carpenter and Adam Wainwright, I slept at night, right? Because when those guys take the bump, you win, right? I mean, it's just what happens when you build a good baseball team. It all starts with starting pitching, and I don't look at the Cardinals having a 1 or a 2. So how do we do that? How do we get that? Well, right now the Seattle Mariners are really desperate for two things, right? They want a right-hand hitter because they can't hit left-hand pitching, and they want a high-leverage reliever. Those are the two biggest goals that they have. They also understand that to get that, they're probably going to have to give up one of their starting pitchers, and people don't want Luis Castillo because of the contract, because of the age, and because of the decline. That means you have to trade one of those other 4 or 5 guys, right? One of them. And Herrera I know he's slumping now, but I'm not worried about that. He can flat out hit. He can flat out rake. You've got a deep bullpen. I would think Herrera and a reliever could go get a Bryce Miller or George Kirby or an Emerson Hancock or one of those, starting pitchers, there should be a matchup there just because of the need Seattle has. And Seattle's desperate. They're under 500, yet they arguably have as good a team as the American League. But they have needs, and so they may have to do what the Red Sox just did, and that's make a bad trade to make their team better. Boston just made a bad trade. They traded Conley early for Curtis Mead. That was a lopsided deal in favor of Washington, but it was a trade you have to make. Theo Epstein, the great GM who won 2 world championships in Boston and 1 in Chicago, always said GMs don't get paid to win trades, they get paid to win championships. And so when the Red Sox made that deal, it's because they needed a right-hand hitting infielder with power. Mead is that with 19 home runs. Well, now you're looking at, to me, Seattle. They feel like they need that right-hand hitter and reliever. Well, they have to give up one of those starters, which is painful and will end up being a bad trade. You do it because your window to win is right here, right now, today. And for St. Louis, you make the deal because you got to build up that rotation, not just for this year, but for 27, 28, and beyond.
Jim, last question that I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned Jordan Walker, the breakout campaign that he's had. It's been tremendous. You've been calling for this for like 3 years now. Every year we talk to you and you say, this is the year. It's going to work for Jordan Walker. Well, you were right. It took a couple of years, but it has indeed happened. We've been talking a lot, especially since the J.J. Weatherholt conversation or the contract extension, about what it would look like to extend Jordan Walker and whether or not now is the time to potentially get that done. In your estimation, A, what do you think a contract extension would look like? And B, do you think it is time to go ahead and get that done with Walker?
Oh, I would. I mean, I wouldn't wait. I mean, you guys know how I felt about him. It just took a long time to get here, but I always felt that we would get here. And I think he's going to be a star for years and years to come. I don't know if $150 million gets it done, but I certainly would try. Any of these contracts that you're seeing are club friendly. The J.J. Weatherholt deal, you guys are going to look back and just laugh that the Cardinals were able to do that. I understand why these young players want to take that guarantee money. That's why it's good to sign them here. But just understand how much money they're giving back. I mean, I guess the best comparison I've always told people is go and look back on what Ronald Acuna Jr. did and what Vladimir Guerrero Jr. did, right? All of a sudden, Guerrero signs a $500 million contract while Acuna is still on that small deal he signed 7 years ago. Like the difference in money is just incredible. How much more Guerrero made by going through the system and getting to free agency. So if you can sit there as a team and tie these guys up at today's numbers, the savings is just off the charts. So yeah, I would say if I could get them done, 150 million range, I would get it done. I wouldn't wait because if he puts up a second year like this, good luck trying to sign him. I mean, that's what the Cincinnati Reds tried to do. They're not signing Elly De La Cruz. That ship is gone. And you think the Nationals can sign James Wood? Oh, no. That ship is gone. Once they do it that second time around, you're not signing these guys because these guys might get 600, 700 million. So your chance to get him is right here before they've proven it's real. And in Jordan Walker's case, he doesn't have to prove it to me. I told you guys 3 years ago he was going to be this.
And you eventually were indeed correct. Jim, it's always a pleasure, man. I know this is a crazy time of the year for you, so we appreciate you carving out some time to come on the show. We wish you nothing but the best, and we'll talk with you again soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Jim.
That's Jim Bowden, former Major League Baseball general manager. Always a pleasure to be able to talk with him here on the show. Listen, that was a very different perspective.
Yeah, I didn't expect it.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
T-Bone, what was your reaction when you heard him say, I can't believe we're talking about selling right now. You guys should be buying at the deadline.
T-Bone was celebrating behind the mic.
No, I wasn't celebrating because I think I would be selling at this point. But I actually wasn't that surprised because he's been connecting them to a lot of people. And well, maybe not connecting, but been putting their name on lists that I didn't think they belonged. Like we did the Rebel Report last Thursday. BK and I literally reacted live to a tweet of Jim Bowden during the Rebel Report when he said Kevin Gausman makes sense for Cubs, Braves, and then randomly the St. Louis Cardinals. So I'm not surprised to see that he thinks they should buy because he was an aggressive GM in his time doing things with the Reds and the Nationals. So I'm not actually that surprised he had that take.
Him talking about Jordan Walker there at the end, T-Bone was not feeling good about that, where he was like, just lock him up now. I don't think T-Bone's on board with that.
On the Walker thing?
Yeah.
I think Walker, you're open to it at least.
I'm open-minded to it. I would prefer to wait another year, but I mean, what Jim is saying is 100% right. He does it again. You're talking about $600 to $700 million.
And then the Cardinals are out of that one.
And that's what I asked Derrick a couple of weeks ago. Remember, we'll talk to Derrick Goold, by the way, coming up here in just about an hour. I asked Derrick a couple of weeks ago, how much does the price increase if you wait? And if the answer is it doesn't increase, well, then you wait. I had a differing opinion on it where I'm more in line with Jim. And this is like just a difference of opinion. If you wait, I think the price will go up in a pretty significant way. And at that point, I'm not sure that the Cardinals are
not doing
likely to do it. So that's why I would potentially get it done sooner rather than later. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. But I think that's a big part of the conversation here.
I'll say this. I still, even after talking with Jim, I disagree with him. I would not be buying, but the Herrera one at least intrigues me. And we've talked about that to where, like, look, if you're going to look to buy and sell, the focus should be on finding guys that come into your team and that are here for a long time, and to not do it with top prospects and do it with guys that are on the roster. That's something that is appetizing, to say the least. I would not just be going out there to buy to chase a wild card spot. I think I would rather this team look at their pieces and say sell, because the big picture is more important to me rather than where Jim's coming from.
I struggle with this because I think it depends. The answer is always it depends, right? But on this particular deadline, if they're going to be able to get a pretty significant return for like Riley O'Brien and JoJo Romero and Dustin May, okay, I get it. If you're able to get a pretty significant return for Lars, let's say it's Newt and I'll go with Riley O'Brien, because those are controllable assets, right? The other guys are all potentially expiring deals. If you feel like you can get a big return that helps you in the future, it's hard for me to knock you for it. I get it. I understand it. On the Dustin May front, what are you realistically going to get for him, man? Because I think it's probably guys that slot somewhere into like the 15 to 20 range in your prospect system. And is that really getting people excited? It helps, sure, because you always want more bites at the apple. But does it tangibly change your outlook? I don't think so. Not really. If you're trading JoJo Romero, what are you realistically going to get for him? Probably somebody that fits kind of into that same spot into your prospect pipeline. If you're trading, I'm trying to think, like Ryan Stanek, I don't think you're getting much at all for Ryan Stanek at this year's trade deadline. So if you're only doing the expiring deals and the alternative is, all right, I just don't trade the bullpen guys, or you just trade JoJo and you try to, kind of piece this thing together with what you already have internally in the bullpen, and you go out there and make a move for a Reed Detmers, for example. I would also understand that perspective as well. So I kind of caught between a rock and a hard place at this year's deadline, where I get both perspectives on it. And I have been a little surprised by how many people really all year long, prior to the recent cold streak, have been saying this team is a seller no matter what. I never really agreed with that stance personally.
Yeah, I think the more we get closer to the deadline, the more it screams it's going to be a more aggressive or a more thought experiment 2021 deadline. And what I mean by that is, you think back to 2021, what did they do? They traded away pieces from their major league roster and went out and got small upgrades. They traded away John Gant for Jay Happ. They traded away Lane Thomas, who's a good big leaguer that's a good platoon bat, and they went out and got John Lester. And the reason I say that it's going to be just more of a thought experiment, because I think there could be at least ideas or reports, or they have conversations of, what if we did throw Herrera in a bullpen arm, like Jim said, to Seattle to get pitching? Because what I do agree with what he did say there is, the best way to try and build a winning team is through pitching, not through offense, right? I mean, look at the Cardinals. They've got a pretty good offense, right? We agree. They've got a pretty good top four. Hasn't really mattered much because they don't have the pitching, right? And you look at the best teams in baseball, the Mariners, they've got the pitching. You can look at the New York Yankees when they're healthy. They've got the pitching. And we saw last year, teams can overcome a lack of offense when you have really good pitching staffs. Look at the San Diego Padres. Last year, they were a playoff team. They couldn't hit all season long. They haven't hit all season long this year. Why is it different for them this year? They don't have the pitching to make up for their lack of offense.
Yeah, and I would say especially at this ballpark.
Yeah.
Like, I think what we're learning is, unless you're Jordan Walker, man, it's going to be really hard to hit for power here. And so that just makes it that much more valuable to have excellent pitching, because you're going to have to keep runs off of the board. Now, if you've got special power, that can play here. Whether it's Walker or in the past Nolan Gorman, like guys that have that true raw power, they can play no matter what. But if you're average power here, it just doesn't translate the way that you would like it to. And so that makes it that much more valuable to have that excellent pitching that T-Bone's talking about. And I think that's what they're trying to build in their minor league system. And if you're continuing to be able to add to it here at the major league level, I think there is some legit value to it. I just don't know what the cost is going to be, and that's where I struggle. Like, if the cost for Reed Detmers is one of your catchers and then add in a couple of other pieces, I'm cool with it. If the cost for Reed Detmers is, you're having to give up Tanner Franklin or Liam Doyle or Joshua Baez, well, in that case, I'm not really interested. So it's all determined by what the cost is, and I'm not interested in any other rentals. I'm out.
No, I agree with that.
I have no interest in. And now at this point, Casey Mize has been so good. I think he's going to get a pretty good haul for the Tigers at the deadline if they decide to sell. So I do think it's more of, all right, what could you do for Reed Detmers, Jose Soriano? I didn't ask him about it, but like Marcelo Meyer, guys that could be a part of the now and the future. If you could get something like that, bats or pitching, I'm interested. How would you guys feel if they do that, though? They get a Reed Detmers and they trade from their current roster. Like, they deal JoJo Romero, they deal Dustin May, they deal Ryan Stanek, but they add Reed Detmers. Are you guys cool with that? Is that a comfortable position for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with it because I think you're fixing your rotation for the near future, but you're also selling off pieces that don't really fit into your timeline, and you're bringing in, whether it's lottery tickets or something to put into your prospect pool. That's where, like baseball to me is, yes, you want more bites at the apple and you want more guys, but they do become pieces for you to trade from when you're looking to do that upgrade if you get it right. So I'd be fine with it. I just think if I'm going for starting pitching, and maybe it is just because of the Angels logo and I'm lowering that, I think I'd be looking for a higher upside pitcher like Jim was talking about, and that's where the floating of Ivan Herrera is at least intriguing to me.
Yeah, I just don't think I hear what Jim's saying about the Mariners pitcher. I think the only guys that's getting dealt there is Emerson Hancock, and I don't think he's a higher upside guy than any of the
I'm with you
pitchers. There. I think he's worse than the Angels guys.
Yeah. I have interest in doing the path that you laid out because, you're not getting much for your rentals, and they need pitching. So the question becomes, well, how are they going to get that for next season and get those high upside arms? Sure, they can wait in their system for the hopes of a Quinn Matthews, almost a Bryson Motts, Liam Doyle, Senja, but you're talking 2 or 3 years before those guys are pitching at a really high level at Major League Baseball. They probably need a year to kind of go through some struggles. I'm open to making that move because you don't have anything else, and you're not going to go to the market as a team and add to your rotation of these kind of caliber pitchers. So I think it makes sense to kind of do that. You take your lottery tickets when you sell May, you sell whoever it might be from your bullpen. I'm okay with them trying to thread the needle at this year's deadline. That's mostly them actually playing for 2027.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best case scenario at this point. If you're able to get a Reed Detmers, just to use him as the placeholder here. It could be Emerson Hancock. It could be Jose Soriano. But whoever that controllable pitcher is that becomes available at this year's deadline, and you ultimately sell Dustin May, well, you just replace Dustin May with whoever that new guy is that's coming in. And I think that's an upgrade probably for now and for the future for the Cardinals. And then if you trade JoJo Romero, well, he's probably not going to pitch for you for the next few weeks anyways. I would assume that becomes one of Matthew Liberatore or Bryson Motts. I think you're fine there. And then if you decide to sell a Riley O'Brien, just to use him as an example as well, I know it's more controllable. Yeah, it sucks, and that's going to hurt you in the bullpen, no doubt about it. But you could potentially get a haul for Riley O'Brien. And that's the kind of thing where the opportunity cost of not making that move now, he could easily next year become Ryan Fernandez. It's very much in play. I think he has better stuff than Fernandez, but we've seen this in the past where guys go from being really, really good to marginal at best replacement level relievers overnight. And if you're able to get a big-time return for him, I think it's something the Cardinals absolutely have to consider, even though they could also potentially do that while buying at this year's trade deadline. It'll feel weird in the moment, but it might ultimately be the best-case scenario for them. Real quick, somebody on the YouTube chat, youtube.com/101ESPN STL, going back to the offense versus pitching conversation. STL Chris said, BK is acting like the ballpark is the main reason why the offense sucks. It's not the main reason, but it is a reason. It is a factor in why the Cardinals offense feels worse than I believe it actually is. The Cardinals at home this year are batting .233 as a team, and they're slugging .365. The Cardinals on the road this year are batting .245, 10 points higher, and slugging .405, 40 points higher. Now, you look at the underlying numbers. I'm not going to bore you guys with all the nerdy numbers here,
I don't
but
have the open ready yet.
The batted ball numbers are basically the same. Like, they're hitting the ball similarly at home as they are on the road, but the results are much worse. Some of that is sure baseball happens. A lot of it is because it's really hard to hit home runs at Busch Stadium. Look at last night. The batted balls from Alec Burleson and Jordan Walker, those are a home run at like half of the ballparks in America, if not more. I'm still convinced that Walker one in particular. 25
BK
out of 30 home runs. That was
It's ironic that we're doing an analytics segment, but you're not believing the numbers there.
Somebody else on the YouTube chat, can we look at the visiting team stats only by ballpark? Sure can, and the visitors have actually homered less at Busch Stadium than the Cardinals have this year. That's despite the fact that I think we would all agree Cardinals pitching is most of the time worse than the opponent that they're going up against. And like the batted ball numbers for their opponents are pretty darn good. It's a Busch problem. This is not a personnel issue exclusively for the Cardinals. They also have a lack of power overall. I'm not disagreeing with that. But when the same guys in the same lineup are producing elsewhere and they're not doing it here, you do have to look under the hood a little bit and ask the question, why? Why is that happening? When the same players that are on the opposing side, that are in the other dugout, are struggling more to hit for power here than they are when they go to any other ballpark in America, it's fair to ask the question, why? And the answer appears to be because Busch Stadium is more suppressive of home run power than any other ballpark in America. And now, if that's the case, and you're not going to move in the fences, you have to figure out what the best way is to handle that. How do I build a team to play to my ballpark that I'm in for 81 out of the 162 games a year? I think it's probably with pitching and defense. And with guys that can hit a ton of doubles, because you can get doubles at Busch Stadium. The homers are just hard to come by. Unfortunately, the Cardinals suck at hitting doubles.
Nothing worse than Busch problems.
Coming up here in about 15 minutes, we'll dive into the junk drawer. But next, is this where the Blues should rank when it comes to their top two centers heading into 2026? We'll talk about that next here on BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here with the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night, Cardinals dropped game 1 of their 4-game set to the Cubs 7-3. Game 2 will be tonight, 6:45 will be first pitch. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. I woke up to a piece over on The Athletic. I thought at the time, Alex, it was another Dom piece. But it's not.
Oh, man.
It's from Harmon Dayal, who Alex really likes.
I like Harmon's work. Friend of the show. Can we say that? He's been on once.
Ranking every NHL team's top 6 center duos from best to worst. Now, he did not pull a classic Dom move, which is to rank them 1 to 32.
Classic.
Instead, he ranks them in a classic BK move, which is to tier them off.
Smart. You know, people that do that are pretty smart, BK.
Thanks, buddy. Tier 1, generational top 6 centermen. Edmonton Oilers.
Okay,
it's a list of 1.
Yeah, that's like, oh, yeah, that was a fun tier 1. That one you just kind of mark in permanent marker.
I would say you probably agree with that, right?
I 100% agree with that one.
Tier 2, the elite tier. This includes Colorado with Nathan McKinnon and Brock Nelson.
Okay. I mean, McKinnon's going to raise Brock Nelson's
and
floor
Brock
no
Nelson's
matter what.
really good.
Brock Nelson's good. I wouldn't put him there, but because you got Nathan McKinnon, you're up there.
Florida Panthers, Barkov and Sam Bennett.
Yep.
End of list.
I would have New Jersey up there.
Tier 3, high-end top 6 centermen.
Yeah. New Jersey should be in that second tier.
New Jersey with Hughes and Heischer.
Yeah.
San Jose with Celebrini and Misa.
They're going to be in the second tier in a couple of years.
The Maple Leafs with Tavares and Matthews.
No. I'm sorry, but no. Even for how great Matthews is, and Matthews had a down year, Tavares is not going to put you in that category. But sure.
I can already tell he's not going to like where the Blues are. And we're not even there yet.
Yeah, I can tell.
We're not even there yet.
Jack Eichel and William Karlsson for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, when William Karlsson's healthy, I agree with that.
Wyatt Johnston and Rope Hintz for the Dallas Stars. I think you can make an argument they should be higher.
They should be in the second tier. I think Rope Hintz's lack of availability is part of this problem.
The Hurricanes with Aho and Stamkos.
I agree with that.
That's the end of that tier. Tier 4.
Are you guys waiting for me to be mad that the Blues aren't in tier 3? Because I don't think they should be in tier 3.
Tier 4, above average.
Okay.
Tampa Bay Lightning with Point and Cirelli.
That one, I think they should be higher because Point and Cirelli are incredible, but sure.
Ottawa Senators, Stützle and Cousins.
No, they should be lower.
Really? You love Stützle?
Yeah, as a winger, not as a centerman. Okay. And Cousins is barely available for them. Like, I think Pinto is better than Cousins there.
Alex is going to be so mad. The Mammoth with Cooley and Trocheck.
Sure. Trocheck's, I think, a winger for them. But, yeah, I'd agree with that because Cooley raises him up. And Trocheck when he's playing.
End of list.
Yeah, that's a little dumb in my opinion. But I'm curious to see who's with the Blues here. Here's the thing. I didn't see this list. I knew the Blues were going to be low because of Mason McTavish.
Tier 5, middle of the pack. He specifies here. Star number 1 center, but a below average second line center.
And I'd agree with that description.
Haven't mentioned anybody yet.
If they're not on this list, then you could just stop. This segment's dumb.
The Penguins.
Who's their second line center?
And he has 2 options. Ben Kendall or Tommy Novak as their second line center.
Yeah, Malkin moved to the wing last year, so that one I agree with.
Here you go. Montreal Canadiens. Nick Suzuki and then Jake Evans.
Yeah, Jake Evans had like 20 points last season.
Hey, so did our second line center, Dvorsky.
Yeah, it was actually Pavel Buchnevich.
Yeah.
Anaheim Ducks with Carlson and Granlund.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd... Yeah.
Chicago Blackhawks, Bedard and Frendel.
I don't know how Bedard is considered a star number 1 center, but sure.
Winnipeg Jets, Scheifele and either Bjork or Adam Lowry.
Adam Lowry, BK's most irrelevant captain in the NHL.
End of list.
And finally,
it's not end of. There's no way it's end of list.
Blues with Robert Thomas and Mason McTavish.
Look, I can't get that mad about it that they had Montreal in the same category because the Blues are Montreal. Like Nick Suzuki and Robert Thomas are the same player to me. I don't know what McTavish is. I think McTavish is better than what Jake Evans was last year, but he's a question mark. So I will acknowledge that. I'm not upset about this list.
Do you think they're more likely to go up or down?
Up. Because I think there's upside with McTavish. I don't know if he can get worse than what he's been the last couple of years with Anaheim.
Because Tier 6 is below average, and that includes the Rangers, who have Zibanejad, who's good, and JT Miller. The Washington Capitals with Strome and Pierre-Luc Dubois. The Red Wings with Larkin and Kopp. The Islanders with Horvat and Braden Shin. Columbus with Fantilli and whatever they've got at second line center.
They have nothing at second line
And then
center.
the Buffalo Sabres, who have a whole lot of nothing at second line center.
No, I think they go up rather than down, because I think this is probably worst case scenario what McTavish is these last couple of years, and there's upside here. So because Robert Thomas is a star center, in my opinion, that's a guy that can get 100 points like Nick Suzuki. I think you only go up. The real question is going to be, does McTavish or Dvorsky become that clear-cut number 2 center? Like, I think they could get to that Utah tier, because in my opinion, I don't know if they have a clear star number 1 center. Like, Logan Cooley's really good, but Logan Cooley has not been available for them for an entire season, nor has he put up like 80 to 90 points or a great defensive player. Like, if you were to put Thomas and Cooley in front of me and say who can win a Stanley Cup, I'd go Thomas versus Cooley because of the role he plays.
What if I said go up to the next tier? Because that's basically that tier that we're talking about with the above average, one right below above the Blues. It's just the Lightning, the Senators, and the Mammoth.
Yeah.
Do you think they're more likely to end up as a below average duo or to be in that group with San Jose, the Devils, Toronto, Vegas, Dallas?
I think they're more likely to be in that top group because it's the Devils, Thomas and Hughes are eerily similar, and the reason Heischer is such a valued center is because of how good he is defensively. McTavish is not going to be good defensively, but can he be average defensively for you with Jim Montgomery, and can he go up offensively? That's what raises that level for you.
I think your hope is basically like he takes the step this year that Stankoven took a year ago.
Correct.
Because Stankoven went from middle of the pack, kind of replacement level NHLer that had pedigree,
third liner with Dallas.
You just didn't know what he was going to be long term.
Yeah.
To, all right, this is a legit number 2 center, not just for a team, but from a contender.
Yeah.
From one of the best teams in the NHL and ultimately the team that won the Stanley Cup.
And Stankoven's not the greatest defensively. He's fine. He's just really good offensively, and he's relentless on pucks. And it also works for Carolina because you play in a system that can play into the center that might have deficiencies. So, yeah, I don't think there's a scenario that the Blues fall backwards on this list because Thomas is not going, in my opinion, taking a step back. I think he only goes up like what Nick Suzuki in Montreal is. The real question is, what does McTavish or Dalibor Dvorsky become? And that's what raises your ceiling.
Yeah, and that's why I agree. I think the only way I would see is that they go up or they just stay put, right? I don't think they're going back because I don't see Thomas taking a significant step back. And if he did, then we're talking about bigger problems.
You got big issues.
This went from a retool to a rebuild. So I agree with Alex. I think it's now. Will McTavish get there? I don't know, but you've got at least two outs now, whether it be McTavish or Dvorsky. There must be something going on because BK looks like he's like pooping in his chair right now.
Jeff Passan.
Did they trade for Nikishin?
The Orioles have had conversations with other teams about Adley Rutschman, Jackson Holliday, and Colton Cowser. Quote, this young core that they brought together that they thought was going to be able to take them to the promised land just has not performed to the level expected.
I'll take Jackson Holliday and put him at third base.
Can we make a hard right turn real quick?
No, dude, we were talking
Spend like
hockey.
2 minutes on this.
We were talking hockey.
I'm interested in Adley Rutschman. I know he's a catcher. I know the Cardinals have 20 of them. Adley Rutschman is a sure thing. I don't think he is as good as what his prospect status was. I think he is, though, a guy that Cardinals fans would really enjoy. And he's the kind of player that you can lock it in, I believe, for the next 5 to 7 years. You could give him a contract extension, and I think you feel pretty damn good about it. That would also open up a potential trade asset to go elsewhere as well. He's 15 to 20% above league average for his career offensively as a catcher. That's pretty freaking awesome. I think the power could potentially play here. He's a doubles machine, which plays to this ballpark as well. I would have a ton of interest in Adley Rutschman if he is truly available at this deadline. Let's start with him, and then we'll get to the others. Do you guys have that same interest level in Adley Rutschman?
Yeah,
the contract is the question there.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, are you going to be able to afford to re-sign him on top of giving the contract extension to Jordan Walker that you have to? Because I love the profile of him. I think it matches what the Cardinals want. You've got a switch hitter. He's got the ability to showcase his power, and I do think a change of scenery can benefit a guy like that. I also have to ask the question, what are you paying for? Like, are you giving up a lot to go get Adley Rutschman? Because you're probably giving up one of your top prospects, and I don't know if you want to do that if you're the Cardinals, because you don't know what he's going to look like for your team. And then the contract is something into it. So I'm interested. I just
My guess is you'd have to put Leo Bernal into this.
Which I'm fine with in that one.
Because he's, at least then, if you're the Orioles, I'm trading an older switch-hitting catcher with clear certainty for a younger switch-hitting catcher with upside.
Yeah.
And that's the starting point. There's going to need to be more in the conversation.
I think they're going to be targeting pitching, too.
And that's where I would get concerned, is if you're giving up some of your top pitchers to get this deal done.
I wouldn't do the top pitcher and Liam Doyle. Beyond that, I'd be willing to talk about
Quinn Matthews?
basically anything else. Yeah, I'm willing to include him in the mix.
I don't know if you're in that position yet to start trading away those pitchers that you're hoping has upside. But
I think Rutschman's a stud. I think this is the kind of guy that if you have him behind the plate, you have now started to develop like 6 of your 9 positions that I feel good about for the long term. He would be, out of the 3, he's the one that I'm frankly most interested in.
Are you comfortable with what it's going to look like as he gets older? Because I don't think you're anywhere ready to win yet. He's 28.
I think he's got another 5 years of being really good. I think he's entering his prime right now. And he's basically had 1 below-average season, which is still not terrible for a catcher as a hitter. It was a bad year. He was hurt. Not very good last season. There's no way around that. But for the rest of his career, he's been pretty damn good.
Man, it's a risk. I just don't know if I could say it's a certainty that he's going to be a really good piece for you.
I mean, he's been a 3 to 5 win player every year of his major league career.
Yeah.
And he's been a 750 plus OPS guy basically every year of his career outside of last season. So I don't view it as a huge risk. Now, the risk is what you're giving up.
Well, that's where I think the risk is going to be.
And what the risk is, what's the contract going to be from Rutschman? And I can't speak intelligently to that. I don't know.
That's all where the risk, in my opinion, is. What you're giving up, which might be a few of your top pitchers, and how much you're willing to pay this guy, because you have to get Jordan Walker signed, and you don't know if he's going to sign for 150. And now we're talking multiple guys that might be making north of 200.
You got to do what you got to do.
Well, yeah, you and I can say that, but when have the Cardinals ever been the we got to do what we got to do kind of team?
They haven't been. They're not going to do this. Jackson Holiday. Interested?
I don't have much interest in Holiday. I know he's had a good year this year, but he doesn't do much for me.
I mean, like, I have interest in this, like Marcelo Meyer we talked about earlier. Like, I would bring this in and say, like, can we get more from it and put him at third base? Because this fits more. I mean, now you're talking 22 years old. You're putting him in line with all of these guys. You're playing him at third base. This one I would be a little bit more interested in, but once again, what's the price for this?
I do this. I would absolutely do this.
What's the price,
I
though?
don't know.
Yeah. That's the
expensive.
Yeah.
You would need to give up a pretty good haul.
Plus.
Yeah.
Probably
He's not
your
even
targeting
in
pitcher.
Arv yet, and he's only 22.
If it's like Baez, Tanner Franklin, and Fajardo, is that the kind of deal that you could potentially do for Jackson Holiday?
No, I think I would pay less to go get Marcelo Meyer if it's less.
That's fair.
I think it would be. Yeah, I would pay less to go get Marcelo Meyer versus this for Jackson Holiday.
Yeah, I wouldn't give that up for Jackson Holiday. I also think you've just got Jackson Holiday. I mean, I think his ceiling is no. I think his ceiling's J.J. Wetherholt.
Why not have both?
I think you need more of a right-handed bat. I don't think you need another lefty to add to this core.
You need good bats. I don't care what they hit.
I kind of care.
side?
No, you know how Ollie likes to work. You got to go lefty, righty, lefty, righty, and
Brandon.
we're getting no. I'm with him.
Oh.
Yeah, no, you're going to get rid of
come
Lars.
on, Alex.
No, you're going to get rid of Lars Nootbaar, and so you
No,
got to go lefty, righty, lefty, righty.
I just don't have much interest in Jackson Holiday. I've not seen him. Now, he's played well so far this year in a small sample size of 55 games.
He's
But the
also
last
22
2
years
years, I
old.
haven't really seen it from him. So I'm out on Jackson Holiday.
I'm taking a chance on a 22-year-old any day of the week, especially one that was drafted that high. The price is what concerns me, and that's why I'm saying, can I get Marcelo Meyer for cheaper? Because maybe it's the same upside that Jackson Holiday has.
I am starting to wonder if we are seeing guys that were high school prospects, because we've seen in general, like, prospects are getting to the major leagues faster than ever before, right? Mm-hmm. That's the case here. It's the case elsewhere across Major League Baseball. I wonder if that's happening so fast now that these guys just aren't set up to have major league success. And I think that might have happened here with Jordan Walker. I think that may have happened with Jackson Holiday. I think it's happening across the league. That's anecdotal. I would have to look into it to see if the numbers back that up. But I can't imagine there are a whole lot of players in Major League Baseball under the age of 21 that are having sustained success. And that's when Jackson Holiday was having some of those struggles. Now he's 22 years old, and he's been really good this season for the Baltimore Orioles when he's been able to be on the field. So, yeah, that is the kind of guy that I would be very interested in the Cardinals going out to acquire. He fits into the core. He is somebody that could immediately help them and fits into your long-term plans. I think you've basically got your infield set.
Yeah.
If you were to go about it that way. And you figure out who you want to do. Maybe this allows you, by the way, to trade Alec Burleson. You put the right-handed hitter and Ivan Herrera over at first, and then you make it work from there. I could see something like that happening too.
This is the creativity that I'd be interested in. If like you're bringing in a younger piece to play into the group that you have right now and that you're building towards, and you're adding something to a hole in your organization that you just don't know if it's going to get filled.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to pull off anything with Baltimore because I don't think you have the assets to make anything happen. I don't think you got the assets to make it happen with Jackson Holiday. Rutschman, I think, is going to go for more than we expect. And the reason for that
it's going to be a lot.
I think Baltimore not only are they disappointed in their core, they also read the room. Man, there's not a catcher out on this market. What if we float Rutschman? And I think he's going to get a haul. Like, I think he screams potentially a Yankee to me if they're willing to trade him in division. I have no interest in Cowser. I don't know, but you guys know he was the other name that was mentioned. I don't think he's going to pan out. It looks like as a prospect. I just don't know that you're going to be able to make it work for them. And I think these are more too pricey for my blood, for what I would be willing to give up to make something happen. And I would be, again, I would be more focused on looking at the pitching side of things than I would be on the position player side.
I would like both. I think they are in desperate need for a third baseman, and I'm open to the idea of getting a long-term catcher. Now, that is not something I feel is necessity. It may be Leo Bernal, it may be Jimmy Crooks, it might be Ivan Herrera. Like, you've got other options. Rainiel Rodriguez could still fit into that mix, but if you could get a third baseman, especially, that's where the Jackson Holiday thing comes in.
Yep.
Yeah, very interested in that. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Junk Drawer is next. do you feel about paragliding, Alex? Something you're interested in?
No, I don't
Jumping
like
out of
heights.
a plane, anything like that?
I've always wanted to skydive, but I don't think I'd be man enough to get out of the plane. Now, sometimes you don't have a chance to do that when you go skydiving because they strap themselves to you and basically just roll you out. I think that's the only way I would do it, right? Like,
you need somebody else to make the decision.
Pushing me out so I can just pass out while I fly through the air. But I want to do it. I don't think I'd be man enough to do it.
T-Bone?
Yeah, no interest. I'm terrified.
Really?
I'm terrified of heights.
I am too, but like it's a bucket list thing. Like I think I want to be able to do it.
If I don't, like, my dad is turning 60 next year and he wants to go jump out a plane for his 60th birthday in Key West, Florida. And he's like, we're going, right? We're going to do it. I'm like, you can jump out of the plane.
See,
I will be there on the ground to take the photos of your landing.
That makes more sense. Like when I'm 70, I might do it because if I
have a
die,
heart attack, though.
That's the point. If I die, then you know what? I died, man. I went out, and then I end up wherever I end up and say, hey, I went out.
I guess at least it's
skydiving.
instantaneous in that scenario.
Yeah, I just die, which is great.
The reason I ask is twofold. One, that horrible show that I watched that I unfortunately finished called The Ultimatum, which is like you give your significant other an ultimatum and you go date other people for 3 weeks, then you go back to your significant other.
I watched a Netflix documentary last night that I got in like.
Was it the new one?
The Toxic Love Story.
That was wild,
dude. I watched it.
What a ride!
Katie and I kept watching it, and we kept turning to each other, going, "Thank God you're not a psychopath,
dude." About midway through, there's a twist. T-Bone. I'm guessing you'll probably end up watching it someday.
T-Bone, you didn't expect the twist.
It comes out of nowhere. But anyways,
like, wow.
As part of that, on one of the dates, they dive off the side of a building in Las Vegas.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
To
do it in Vegas?
Oh, my God. A new AP story. Seattle police searching for 2 men who parachute from the Space Needle. If you could parachute off of any area/location, is there one that immediately stands out to you to be like, that would be pretty damn cool?
Vegas would be awesome. I don't think I would be able. I think if I'm doing it, I want to do it over water. Because at least the safety
jump off like the coast of like somewhere in like Italy, maybe,
like
Greece.
the Jesus statue in Brazil. That'd be cool. Just parachute off of that thing.
Rio de Janeiro.
Is that Rio? Yeah, I think so. But that would be cool. But like, yeah,
a lot of shots during the World Cup of that.
I think I would like to do it over water somewhere.
Agreed.
That would be cooler than me looking at the ground, being like, "Well, this doesn't work."
Doing it off of like the Statue of Liberty would be pretty damn cool.
That's a good one.
That would be really cool. See the skyline of New York
down and then dive out.
I kind of like
just
that.
Hope the wind doesn't take you into the Statue of Liberty.
Somebody said the Arch. Not sure you're getting a whole lot of scenic views from that.
I don't want to fall in that river.
I'm out.
Yeah, that one, I might just stick with the land.
You're more likely to die from the river than the fall.
Because my mouth's going to be open and God only knows that going in.
Man, that bacteria that's going around for everybody right now, I think you're going to end up with one of those.
Yeah, I'm out.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to talk to Derrick Goold, Cardinals beat writer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. We certainly have a lot of questions for him about the Cardinals pitching side of things. He joins us in 15 minutes. You doing that for Derrick?
No, for the Cardinals pitching.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, I'm very excited.
No, I saved it for not after Derrick. It's when you said he'll talk about the Cardinals pitching.
Touche. Coming up next, though, the regular season is not when we're going to learn about the Major League Baseball competitive balance problem, even if one national analyst seems to think so. We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, I like Ken Rosenthal. I think he does a really good job, and boy, is his reporting excellent. But his piece today completely missed the boat, Alex. I think it completely missed the mark.
Let me guess. Was it talking about the pending lockout and the salary cap?
Kinda.
Okay, well, that checks out with Ken.
His title of the piece says Major League Baseball says excuse me. Let's try this again. Take two.
Hey-o.
Major League Baseball says that baseball lacks competitive balance. This season is defying that argument. He then goes on to basically say, hey, look at the playoff standings today. It's a bunch of mid to small market teams that are expected to make the playoffs. He's not wrong on that, Alex. I can't disagree with the sentiment. Right now, if the season were to end today in the American League, you would see the Tampa Bay Rays as the winner of the American League East. That's a big deal. You would see the Chicago White Sox in the postseason. You would see, as part of the wild card, the Cleveland Guardians in the postseason. In the National League, there are some similar conversations. The Pittsburgh Pirates, as of today, would make it to the postseason as a wild card contender. The Brewers are the second best team in the National League as of today. Those are good stories for baseball. They are also stories that exist every year within baseball. It is not new for small market teams to make it to the postseason. What I think he misses in his piece is that the conversation is not about small market teams feeling as though they're completely pushed to the side when it comes to making the playoffs. They feel that way about contending for a title. That is what has changed in Major League Baseball. It used to be that the Cardinals could go to the World Series in 2006, 2011, and 2013. It used to be that the Royals could go in 2014 and in 2015. It used to be that you could be a mid or a small market team and you could aspire to win it all. That has not happened since 2015. The only two small to mid-market teams that have been to the World Series since then are the Tampa Bay Rays in the COVID season and the Cleveland then Indians against the Cubs in 2016. That's it. Every other team spins big. Top 10 payroll in all of Major League Baseball. Even the Toronto Blue Jays, we said this at the time. Man, you may feel as though they're a small market team. They very much are not, and their payroll was top 5. The Texas Rangers that year that they went to it and won, that felt like a feel-good story because they kind of came out of nowhere that year. It wasn't some Cinderella story, though. They were top 5 in Major League Baseball in payroll that year. They spent to win. So I think that's what Ken Rosenthal is missing here. It's not about getting to the playoffs. We all know the Cardinals can get there. They've done it a million times in the last decade. Can you win when you get in? That is where these small and mid-market teams are having their struggles right now, and it is in part because of the payroll disparity between the Dodgers, the Yankees, all these other teams, and the rest of the league.
Well, listen to the conversation, if you missed it, that we just had with Jim Bowden. Like, Jim thought we were crazy to be bringing up selling because they're, a game and a half out. The reason we are bringing that up is because you know what the landscape is in the National League, and you've seen this Cardinals team. There's no feeling from, frankly, other than what I would say maybe 2 other teams in the National League, maybe 3, that the fan bases say, oh, yeah, you could get to the playoffs and beat the Dodgers.
Do you think Brewers fans believe they can do it?
No.
Probably not.
Truly,
I think the Phillies probably believe they could do it.
Sure. And maybe the Braves.
I think there's some Brewers fans that think maybe it's insane, but I think they believe they could because of Mizorowski.
Because baseball's weird, 7-game series.
Yeah. And it's why they want him to go buy at the deadline, because they're like, well, if we go get Derrick Goold, we could beat them.
And the other thing is, like, hey, maybe they say we're the number 2 seed, they're the number 1 seed. We wouldn't even have to meet them to the CS, and maybe the Phillies or the Braves take them down beforehand.
Yeah. But
I guess maybe that could be
think about that. All of these teams that are in the playoff race, to Ken Rosenthal's point, how many of those fan bases believe they could win the World Series this year or even get to the World Series this year? I'd say probably none of them. And that's the problem with baseball. In the American League, everybody's probably thinking we got a shot to get to the World Series, but then you look at it and you're like, but we still have to go up against the Dodgers. Oh, and by the way, the Dodgers probably could go trade for Derrick Goold if they wanted at this year's deadline. Like, the Dodgers have set up their roster with the payroll to where they can just rest half of their pitching staff throughout the entire season, because guess what? We'll still make the playoffs, and then we'll be healthy when we get there. We will go out there and throw 4 of the best hitters in Major League Baseball at whatever team we go up against because we have that payroll. This has nothing to do with the regular season. In April, everybody thinks their team can be a playoff team, and most times you're in that race. But the problem is in April, it's not May, it's not June, it's post-deadline, and then it's October when you get to the playoffs, because that's when every team is realistic and says, yeah, we're not going to buy because we got to deal with the Dodgers, and it's not worth giving up our top prospects.
And it's not just October either, right? I mean, like, sure, I agree with what you guys are saying about the regular season, right? I mean, we've seen this through the lifespan of Major League Baseball.
Cardinals are a perfect example of this.
100%. It's more of like when we get to the offseason, and now that you've got teams like the Dodgers who are printing money, the Phillies, you can throw other teams into that mix that are top 10 payrolls. They're inflating the upper tier of the market. So what that means is for like a team like the Brewers, when Mizrahi becomes expensive, guess who's not going to be a Brewer? Guess who's going to end up being traded so they can go because they know they can't sign them? Because even if we want to say, look, some of this is on ownership, right? Brewers should be willing to go out and pay for guys. When you end up with guys that have markets inflated like Kyle Tucker ended up with this offseason, the mid-tier and the small-tier markets just can't afford those kind of contracts. And that's the other problem that you're seeing across baseball. That payroll disparity is really driving these decisions in the offseason. And that's why I agree with what you guys are saying. When we get to October, some Brewers fans might be saying they think they've got a shot. Everybody across baseball is going to bet against them, though, and going to bet on the Dodgers, whoever they run into.
Now, I will say, a cap doesn't solve everything. There are going to be unintended consequences of a cap in Major League Baseball. Like, you look at the NBA. T-Bone, you just mentioned, you can't necessarily keep all your players, can't even keep maybe most of them in Major League Baseball. Same is true of the NBA. Like, guys just go where they want to go. If you have a star, there's no guarantee he sticks with you for his career. We see it all the time where guys get disgruntled and they say, I'm going to one of 5 teams. I'm going to the Lakers. I'm going to the Miami Heat. I'm going to wherever. But they're more likely to stay with you in the NBA than they are currently in Major League Baseball, where you basically get 6 years and he's gone. He ain't sticking here. He's going to go to the Phillies. He's going to go to the Dodgers. He's going to go to the Yankees. We all know Mets. It's one of like 5 teams in Major League Baseball. They're going to leave. In the NBA, at least there's a shot. Like Chet is sticking with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shea is sticking with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Is stuck with Milwaukee for a while.
Yeah. Exactly. Will they be there forever? No, but at least you get a little longer than you do in Major League Baseball. And so I think it helps in that regard. It doesn't necessarily fix the problem, but there's no true way to fix that, I don't think. I don't think cap is coming to Major League Baseball, but I think there's going to be something that helps with the payroll disparity where maybe you tamp down the top and bring up the bottom a little bit. And I'm also not in 100% favor of the owners either. Like I'm kind of in the middle here. There are some owners that are cheap, flat out. I think Pittsburgh's been cheap. They don't deserve to make it to the postseason, and they sure as hell do not deserve to win the World Series with the way that they spend. But there are also some legitimate arguments that I think people just dismiss with the payroll disparity that currently exists in Major League Baseball. Yes, it does help the Dodgers that they're able to spend this year $330 million on their payroll and $420 million on their collective bargaining tax threshold. To suggest otherwise, I think would just be lying to everybody. Their CBT number is $420 million.
And I think that's low because they put so much in deferred money.
Well, that's part of the CBT. The Cardinals is 113. It's 3 or 4 times what the Cardinals are spending, and the Cardinals are 25th. Like, to put a finer point on it, 30th in Major League Baseball is the Miami Marlins at $85 million this year. The Dodgers are literally spending toward the tax 5 times the money that the Marlins are spending on their team this year. That can't happen. That doesn't even make sense. Nobody in their right mind would come up with a sport where that exists. And meanwhile, the Mets are at $375. The Yankees are at $340 million. The Phillies are at $317. It's not just the gap between the haves and the have-nots. It's the gap between the haves and like the middle tier that has expanded exponentially from where it was as recently as a few years ago. So baseball needs to do something about that. What does it look like? What form does it take? I don't know, but there's something that clearly needs to happen
That's
here.
what the next year with no baseball is going to look like. They'll argue over it and probably settle on something that doesn't really solve the problem, but inches closer to the end zone.
Can I tell you my biggest fear is what's going to happen in this lockout?
Sure.
It's not so much that we're going to miss games, because now that would be a fear. My fear is we're going to miss the entire 2027 season for them to end up basically at the same spot they are now.
That's what I'm saying.
Because that is where I see this going, is the owners say, we're going to play hardball, we're going to miss a whole season. Eventually players cave. Players stay strong enough, and eventually the owners cave themselves because they have to make money them as well. And we basically end up in the same spot, and we miss an entire year of baseball for literally no reason
That's
at
what
all.
I think is going to happen. I think this goes into it. I think you miss an entire season, and all they do is they just inch closer from where they are now to what they want to get to, but they say, well, we'll kick the can down the road and approach this again 4 years from now or whatever their deal is.
You want to hear my bold prediction?
We get a cap?
We only miss a month of the season next year.
That is bold.
My bold prediction is that we will miss about a month of spring training. They'll push the season back about a month, and we'll be able to get the vast majority of the year played. And I think we play like 140 games next year. And ultimately, the Major League Baseball looks at that and wonders, is this actually the better way to go about it? Should we stick with a 140-game schedule or something thereabouts instead of having the full 162?
Oh, never mind. I changed my worst case scenario. I like 162.
I don't. I'll take the 140.
Coming up next, Derrick Goold joins the show. I want to talk to him about the Cardinals' current view of Matthew Liberatore, what the plan is with Quinn Matthews and Bryson Motts, and how he believes the Cardinals view their outlook as we are now about a week away from the Major League Baseball trade deadline. We'll talk to Derrick Goold for our weekly conversation with him next here on 101 ESPN. Love being able to catch up with our guy, Cardinals beat writer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Derrick Goold, each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. Has been a tremendous asset to us throughout the season, and we talk to him now here on 101 ESPN. Derrick, it's going to be a busy week ahead of you as you cover the Cardinals prior to the Major League Baseball trade deadline. How you doing today, man?
No, I'm good. I'm getting rest today, right? Fuel. I need to prehydrate or prehydrate, not rehydrate. Got to prehydrate for what the week's at. It's going to be interesting. You know, there's so many teams that are still kind of within the vicinity of competing. There's a lockout. There's just a lot of factors. And I'm really interested to see if maybe the Cardinals stand out in some regard because they've been so clear in their direction, you know, and they're not one of these teams that has kind of been wishy-washy. They've said what they're going to do. And that makes them a bit of an outlier in this market and maybe gives them a chance to be a bit of a tipping point for it.
Is it your belief, Derrick, that they are not only leaning towards seller at the moment, but that is the expectation, is that they will be moving a decent amount of their major league assets at this year's deadline?
Those are two different things. A decent amount, I'm not sure. You know, that some of that will depend on the marketplace and the interest. But, you know, they were always going to sell. It just was a matter of either how deep those cuts would be or what they would try to get. You know, if anything, they were going to sell. You know, it's like a matter of like, okay, what did they go out to try to shop for? Were they going to go out and try to get maybe, say, a lefty reliever that would help them out, but they would have traded Jojo Romero to get the future talent that he could command. So it was basically like where were they going in that regard? So I think they have made it clear that they would look, some of these contracts, I mean, we've talked a lot about it. Dustin May stands out. He was signed to be traded. I don't know what outcome would have happened for him not to at least be available via trade. Do they get the offer? Well, we know what the price is for him, or we at least know where the bidding begins. It's whatever the Cardinals put as the compensatory draft pick that they'll get for offering him a qualifying offer. Beat that, and it makes a lot of sense for them to trade him. And that was always going to be the case, I guess, unless they maybe had a 10-game lead in the division, which was unlikely, right? So I don't know what outcome. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about it. I don't know what outcome would have led to them not selling at all at the deadline. They were always going to sell.
Derrick, I would imagine that, like you just mentioned in the Cardinals' shoes, like you're listening on anything and everything just to see what the market presents. Do you believe that there's a lot of guys on an untouchable list for the Cardinals, or is that a very small list?
It's a great question. You know, I think there's probably, you know, the list is probably longer this year than it's been in recent years, is how I would probably put that. And that's both an example of how encouraged they are by some of the breakthroughs and performances and how intrigued they are about having that talent do that for them, but also where they are in their, you know, in their kind of competitive cycle, right? So it's going to be a little bit longer list than, say, you know, a few years ago when they're looking at like, okay, well, we can't trade Jordan Walker. We're not going to move on from him because that might be the player who's the middle of the lineup and that bat is rare. So not going to move on from him, but they'd listen on a whole lot of other folks. I think the list is a little bit longer. I mean, I don't know if you'd say that Jurrangelo Stange is untouchable, but gosh, I can't think of a trade that the Cardinals would be really eager to include him in. Brandon Clark, another example, right? Now, like 6 years ago, a guy like that, you know, they're like, oh, well, who are they going to trade him for? This year, you're like, well, you know what I mean? Like this year, be like, you can't imagine that they would even entertain that conversation.
Yeah, there's just no reason to, unless you're
reason to.
I mean, unless you're getting, you know, like Hunter Green or something like that, but it's not happening.
Ooh, that sounds fun though.
It just seems unnecessary to even bring it up. I am curious though, Derrick. There's been, I think the market, and this is my read on it. Maybe you have a different one, but there's such a lack of sellers out there this year because everybody feels as though they're kind of in the mix, at least, that I think you're getting more of these controllable assets that are at least in our world, right, in the speculation world, being discussed where like Zach Neto's name gets brought up as a possibility, or you hear today Jeff Passan mentioned, hey, the Orioles guys, whether that's Cowser, Jackson Holiday, like maybe they become potential options at the trade deadline. I saw Marcelo Meyer's name was brought up yesterday as a, hey, could the Red Sox maybe use him as a piece that gets them something to help for the right now?
Yeah.
Do you think the Cardinals could get in on any of those kinds of conversations, Derek, where it is a true controllable asset that might help them for right now, but it's as much about 27, 28, and 29 as it is for the 2026 season?
That is a remarkable question, and bear with me, because it's like, do two hypotheticals make a truth? Right?
Welcome to BK and Ferrario.
Yeah, that's what this show is all about.
I want to credit, I want to like compliment the structure of that question, because you presented like, if these players are hypothetically available, then could the Cardinals hypothetically also get involved?
Yeah.
I mean,
you're starting to get the show, Derek.
Man, no, I think it's, I mean this sincerely. I know it kind of comes across as if I'm being wry, and I'm not. That was just brilliant. That was really well written. It was well structured. It was well done. And you know, I'm kind of shrug emoji. I'm not sure. Like, I don't know.
That's the right answer.
I don't really know how to answer that. I will say, I think what you've hit on is the reality. The two things that are happening, right? When you have a marketplace where there aren't clear sellers, you know, nature abhors a vacuum. And so speculation fills that vacuum. And in today's coverage, you know, entertainment is just as important as information. There's no ramifications for the speculation, right? If they're wrong, right? And it's not like, you know, when we had to put it in print, and if it was wrong on the porch, then you lose a subscriber. Now you just entertain your Twitter followers, and they are happy to do it. So, I think that speculation is filling the vacuum. The other part of it, and this is the substantive part of your question,
sure,
which I think is real, is do you see more challenge trades, or what we would used to refer to as challenge trades, right? Most recently, one that springs to mind that worked out well for both teams is a deal the Cardinals did with the Phillies. They got Jojo Romero. The Phillies got Edmundo Sosa. Cardinals have one of the better, most consistent late inning lefty relievers over the last few years in that deal. The Phillies got a utility fielder who played for them in the World Series. That was a challenge trade of sorts, right? From depth to gain something of need for both sides. And so I think you're seeing some of those dots connected. And there's reality to that, right?
The Curtis Meade deal?
Yeah, exactly. Great example, right? And the high price of doing business there. That's exactly right. And, I found that deal fascinating because of the perception of the players involved. It really seemed like both teams valued the guy that they got more than the guy that they traded. And that's like kind of classic challenge deal, right? And so you have the makings of that with the Cardinals, right? Is there a team that values Nolan Gorman more than the Cardinals do? And could you make a trade in that regard, right? He's in AAA. He's been struggling there, but he has live wire pop, that light tower power. If you can tap into it, if somebody sees like, the Cardinals have tried to make him a second baseman, make him a third baseman, we're going to look at him as just a hitter, first baseman, whatever, right? If you find that team, then you make that challenge trade. And I think there are the makings of those out there. There's certainly the conversations like that out there. If they come to a fruition, we'll see. We'll probably, 90% of the conversations are never going to either be public or happen. But I think what you've hit on there is a description of this marketplace. One, the coverage of it abhors a vacuum, so speculation takes place. Two, because so many teams are still within the vicinity of a playoff berth, you are looking at challenge trades.
On those challenge trades, Derek, could you put any of the pitchers into that category for the Cardinals, of a Palante, a Leahy, or maybe a Matthew Liberatore, if the Cardinals have interest in gauging the market on those names?
Yes. The short answer is yes. Last week wrote a bit about how teams were working up scouting evaluations, looking at Palante, right? The question was, what were they looking at him as? There were some teams that saw him as a reliever that they could get to really help either give them some depth for the stretch run here, a counterintuitive counterintuitive kind of right-handed pitcher who has pitches has a pitch that's an outlier that makes him effective when he's at his best against lefties. Could that have a play that helps in the playoffs? Because, holding back left-handed bats is such a key part of the playoffs, right? Whether you're facing the Phillies with Harper and Schwarber or the fella out west, Shohei, and that cavalcade of left-handed batters that the Dodgers have, so could he help them? The trick there becomes the Cardinals will want to sell him as a starter and get that return. And an interested team may say, no, we want to use him as a reliever, and that's the price point we're setting for him. So then you have to find a way for those two really separate circles to overlap.
Derrick Goold joining us here on BK and Ferrario. You can read his work, including a very lengthy Ask Goold, which I spent the time reading earlier today, over on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch website. STLtoday.com is where you can go to find that. Derrick,
it's the Moby Dick of mailbags.
I would imagine you are going to get, over the coming days and weeks, a lot of questions about Matthew Liberatore and his spot in the rotation, the plans with him, what are they going to do? So I will go ahead and be the one that does it for you here. What's the plan in your estimation with Matthew Liberatore at this point?
No, I made it very clear. We were all in the conversation with Ali Marmol yesterday, and I asked him about, when a hitter is going, let's see if I can present this correctly. I was asking about, like, when a hitter has reached a point where they are only going backwards in the majors, and there's a concern that they're not getting positive reinforcement, they're not making the adjustments, they're not moving forward, and they could do more harm than good. We have seen players in that spot get demoted to AAA, right? Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker, you could argue, was in that spot. We've seen that Thomas Sajaci needed playing time, but, Victor Scott, there's been guys who are recent examples of this, where pushing forward in the majors was going to do more detriment to their ultimate development than just, hey, go back, find some positive, get away from where the box scores matter as much as they do here. So I was asking Oliver Marmol, why are pitchers, specifically starters, different? Because it has become clear over the last week, 2 weeks or so, that's not something that they are really considering with Liberatore. So why is that? Because there have been some games where it really looks like he's hit a wall, and that trying to push through it hasn't happened, and the results are bruising. So what is that doing to his development? And that prompted a whole conversation about, like, when you have a guy like Liberatore who has had success in a role in the majors in relief, that becomes the option if there's not forward progress as a starter. Not going to AAA, because they already know that he's been successful in relief. The question then becomes, when do you move in that direction? And it sure seems like that's where the Cardinals are at. Not that Matthew Liberatore doesn't belong in the majors, or that he has to sort things out in AAA, or even that he needs a confident boost of going down there against less talented hitters. That doesn't help his development in their estimation. What does is what role they continue to try to see if he can excel in. And that, that conversation is if it's not here and now, it's at least on the horizon for the soon. And they've lined it up to at least give them the choice of Dobbins this next time around making that start.
Well, and that's just kind of what we were talking about earlier in the show. One with Liberatore struggles, but when you get to see Dobbins pitch against the same lineup and have more success than what Libby had. But on top of that, Derrick, you've got Quinn Matthews knocking on the door to try and get to the major leagues. And it's hard for me to imagine they're going to try and find a way to trade away two of their starting pitchers to open up roster spots. So it truly feels like the competition that Matthew Liberatore is fighting for. But when you've got Dobbins doing this and Matthews in the minors and Libby just struggling from start to finish, it feels like, how do you keep moving forward with this guy? Very similar, I equated it last week to what we saw with McGreevy and Fedde last year, to where you kept seeing Fedde struggle. McGreevy finally got that same start against a Rockies team, and they said, okay, enough with Fedde. Now we can move to McGreevy.
Yeah, I think that last part there is really parallel. I would stop shy of comparing Liberatore to Fedde. Fedde was struggling and didn't have a future with the Cardinals.
Yeah,
and
for
didn't
sure
have success in any role. Liberatore at least has had success in a role that, let's remind ourselves, is wide open at the moment. Like, they don't have that guy.
And he's had experience in the past and success with
lost
it.
them games, Derek, multiple in the last 10 days. It's crazy.
They have. Like, they have lost games because Jojo Romero isn't on this roster.
Correct.
I mean, full stop. Yeah. And I'm not sure that, Liberatore would have solved that, but Jojo Romero would have won a couple of these games for sure, which is fascinating to think about, that they'd be that much closer. But that also speaks to, like, maybe what they should command, for Jojo Romero. I mean, he also has success against some of these playoff lefties that I was mentioning, and that cannot be ignored. Their teams want to line up for a guy who has had in small sample sizes, but has the stuff to attack those left-handed bats in those lineups. I mean, Jojo's near the top of the list. All that being said is, the Cubs do well against lefties. So in some ways that was stacked up for Dobbins to do well, right? I mean, they're a team that has had success, that hits lefties well. So Liberatore had that working against him. Dobbins had that working for him. It should not, I mean, we cannot ignore the fact that Quinn Matthews is lined up on Dustin May's day, and whatever happens going forward here, we'll see if they adjust that or not. But that has happened now a couple times. And they are obviously entertaining offers for Dustin May. So you could see how they wouldn't need to trade two to adjust the rotation, just one.
Derrick Goold joining us here on 101 ESPN. Derrick, do you think there is a scenario where the Cardinals... there is a scenario. What do you think is the appetite? I'll ask this a different way. What do you think is the appetite for the Cardinals to both buy and sell? We had Jim Bowden on earlier today, the former Major League Baseball general manager. He disagreed with our assessment that they're probably are sellers, but also that they should be sellers. He said he thinks that they should buy, try to get into the playoff mix, and stick with where they're at. Do you see a scenario where, not for, expiring deals or anything like that, but they could go out there and get guys that legitimately, tangibly help them down the stretch?
Out of curiosity, who did he say they should buy to pull that off? Would that do it? I'm not familiar with how he hits.
God, I love it.
He brought up the classic line of go get a controllable bat.
Yeah.
Now, who is that controllable bat?
I don't know.
I'm not entirely sure.
And don't give up your top 5 prospects in your system. I wish I would have thought of that snarky response, Derek, when we had him on.
I didn't. That was a genuine question. There was no snark intended.
No, but I think we could have put the snark to it.
A, there was, and B, that's all
I was
right,
acknowledging my own lack of information about how Reed Detmers is as a hitter.
Look,
that's
Derek,
all.
I was
just acknowledging this absence of information that I had.
Derek, I have worked with the king of snark and tone for the last 5 years in BK. I know it when I hear it.
Okay. I think it, I think if the Cardinals go shopping, it's obviously not for the moment, with one exception. If they do look at this kind of bullpen and go, a short timer would help, and they find that the price or the offers for a Stanek and an O'Brien and a Jojo Romero are so compelling that they do make those deals, then going out and acquiring someone who is left when the music stops at 3 p.m. Monday to just fill some innings so they're not like going through the waiver wires. I do think that that's possible. There are some lefties out there who have years of control beyond this year who you could see them making a good move for. The price would be realistic, but it wouldn't be exorbitant, right? And you could get a guy who's in the majors and would be there for the next 2-3 years, almost like repeating the JoJo trade, essentially, which I don't know if anybody thought of the Sosa for JoJo as a buyer seller. It was a bit of both, right?
Yeah.
And so it'd be that kind of deal. I did go into this whole stretch, and, you go in eyes wide open and you talk to a lot of folks, just like teams do, right? You try to get as much information as possible. They have better access to it because most folks are honest with them, though not entirely honest, but most folks will share their motivations with them that they won't with a reporter. But I will say that I wondered if there would be one of those deals available to them where they could get a guy now, use what financial might they do have, that gap there on the payroll that they do have, and take a guy on now to kind of beat the whatever is coming our way this winter, right? If you think a guy has years of control, be it a starter, starting pitcher, be it a lefty reliever, or be it a bat, could you make that move now, jump the line, and be ahead of the winter? Because then you're willing to take the salary on and then have this guy in a spot of need, for the years to come. Finding that, it's been really tricky to find that bat that would do that. I think the Cardinals have the wherewithal, meaning they have the financial room, they have the prospects on hand, they have the creativity, because we've seen it already in the deals that they've already made. But I just don't know if that bat is out there because so many teams are still in the mix and the lockout is such an uncertainty. I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear your guys' thoughts on that. I've been asking around, some guys who fit that bill would be like a Matt Chapman, but like what would be the appeal for the Cardinals of that?
Right. Yeah. That feels like a repeat of
Arenado
previous history.
Yeah. Like
getting a guy back into his career.
Right. It was from the same high school. Yeah. It seems like Arenado, revisited a little bit, though less of a player at the moment, and higher cost as you look at it. So, you see that and go, okay, well, if that's the kind of deal that's out there, no, what would be the one beyond that? And that just hasn't surfaced. That doesn't mean it's not out there. It just
Neto is probably
looking
the
and haven't seen it.
Thing to that you could say.
Yeah. But why?
The return is going to be huge. The profile is not something that I am all in on, given the return that is going to be necessary there. I'm with you. Like, C.J. Abrams' name has been brought up, but I can't imagine what they're going to be asking for. You want to talk about those guys that you mentioned that are untradeable? Well, those are going to have to be included in a deal like that. I just don't see it, Derek. I think these are offseason moves that we're talking about, and given what you said lies ahead for the offseason, I don't know what the appetite's going to be there either. I did have one other question that I wanted to ask of you, because we've been talking about this, and I know it's been something you've done a ton of reporting on in the past. I remember reading about this when I first got to St. Louis from you, where the Cardinals looked into why Busch Stadium was suppressing so much offense. And there had been talks over the years of, do you move in the fences to potentially improve the offensive performance here? Well, this year it is literally the worst home run park in all of America. There's nowhere that suppresses home runs the way that Busch Stadium does, and that's new.
In all of America is quite a wonderful statement.
Well,
Toronto's a little bit better with what you're saying, right?
In the major leagues. I should clarify here. I'm sure there's like a polo ground somewhere that is a little harder to hit a home run in.
I was just thinking about like all the fenceless ballparks out west where like you're literally hitting it into a ravine and 570 feet away.
It's harder than that. Like that's what it's become here at Busch Stadium.
Yeah.
Derek, what can they
Pull
do?
Side power right-handed hitters have a better chance of getting out of Yellowstone than Busch Stadium.
Is there something like, do they have to revisit how they construct the club in the future? Is there another revisiting of the fence conversation? Like, what do you do? Because this is a real thing that has tangibly impacted games this season.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you asked me this at the end of our segment here, because we could talk for hours about this.
Sure.
So just to discuss the timing of it, because I think, you mentioned the fact, could they rethink how they build a team? I think we've already seen that. I think they have rethought. If you live through the Brandon Moss era, we'll call it, you saw them shift, even to the point of like some of the trades that follows. We talked about Liberatore. Anytime you talk about Liberatore, you're talking about Randy Arozarena. Anytime you talk about Randy Arozarena, you're talking about the decision that the Cardinals made to veer into defense with Harrison Bader and Lane Thomas and away from Randy Arozarena, who didn't have the same position as those guys. Lane Thomas was about to get a long run in center field. He got injured. Harrison Bader took over, and what was his calling card? It was superior defense at a ballpark that was pitcher friendly. So you've already seen them lean into this. And I bring up that era because that was when they were looking at, okay, is it time to move the fences in? Kansas City did that. Baltimore famously did that. Cardinals had discussions with Baltimore. They explored what are the routes to go, who has to approve it, what would the cost be, and what would go in that gap. Would it be more seats? Would it be something else? Would it be widening of an area? All that stuff, right? They looked into it, and then they won 5 Gold Gloves. And they were the first team to do that. They won the team Gold Glove. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. This is part of our calling card. So what if you have a ballpark that leans into part of the identity of the team? And that became more prominent for them. And you can look at some of the teams that they built here recently. Infield defense with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. Those are 2 Gold Glovers, 2 excellent defensive players. Mason Wynn as a priority shortstop because of his gift. Look at some of the calls that they've made in center field, even this year. Victor Scott, Nathan Church. You're seeing a team that already is building itself towards that ballpark and almost like takes it as a given that this is the type of team that's going to win here. They want to miss more bats, yes. If they get a pitching staff that misses more bats, I'd be really intrigued to see if that conversation changes. They're going to have something. If Jordan Walker continues this rise and Joshua Baez arrives next year, they're going to have 2 right-handed power hitters who, in a league that is hungry, starving for right-handed power hitters, and they're going to put arguably 2 really good power hitters. Maybe Jordan Walker's the best right-handed power hitter at that point in time, at a ballpark that absolutely quiets right-handed power hitting. But those guys are different. Jordan has power to all fields, so maybe he's the answer in that way. Maybe that should be his nickname. He's the answer to the Busch Stadium riddle, because it's not going to swallow his power whole in the way it has for pull hitters who look for power. So this I think it's more about the pitching staff than necessarily the individual hitters that they'll have. But it does speak to how the Cardinals already over and over and over and over again, especially after that initial thought about what do we do with the walls, have doubled down on defense.
It's a fascinating conversation. We'll certainly have more of it over the coming weeks and months. Derrick, appreciate the time as always.
We're going to have all winter to discuss this stuff.
We got a lot of time.
We're going to have a lot of time this winter.
We're going to become architects.
We called Evan Drellick the bringer of doom last time around when there was negotiations during COVID. Derrick,
that was rough.
I have a feeling when we have our conversations during the winter, there's going to be a lot of Derrick Goold bringer of doom. When it comes to those, unfortunately.
That's not cool.
No,
we'll enjoy the conversations, but
we'll bring optimism to it.
I'm not anticipating a whole lot of optimism early on.
I thought this was going really well. Bringer of doom.
I know.
When did this become Thanksgiving? This is like what?
Oh yeah.
We can get into that in
walking
November,
to family
right,
Thanksgiving. Yeah. Okay.
Derrick's
Thanks,
walking
guys.
into a trap every time he comes on with us now.
Derrick, it's been a pleasure, man. Take it easy.
All right. Have a great day, guys. I'm going to go bring doom somewhere else.
Good luck with it.
It's Derrick Goold. Joins us each and every Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario. All right, we're well overdue for a break. We'll get into that and hit the rewind next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here. The Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Game 2 of the Cardinals' 4-game set against the Cubs is tonight, 6:45 first pitch. Colin Ray on the mound for Chicago. Michael McGreevy expected to get the start for St. Louis. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an Icon Heating and Air Conditioning dealer.
If you guys missed any of the show, I highly recommend checking out the podcast page. It's been a fun one. 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all sponsored by
Ferrario Company.
Alex, when people go over there, they'll be able to see our conversation from today with Jeremy Rutherford, with Jim Bowden, and Derrick Goold. 3 great conversations, 3 very different conversations. You can find all of that today on the podcast page after the show or on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Cardinals back in action this evening. They'll be taking on the Chicago Cubs. It feels like that's kind of secondary at this point, but Michael McGreevy's on the mound, and I enjoy watching Michael McGreevy pitch. You guys excited for this one?
Yeah, compared to what the last couple have been with the starting pitching, I'm looking forward to watching Michael McGreevy go up against the Cubs.
I would imagine your full bullpen should be ready to go tonight.
Well, considering they didn't have to be called upon, yes, they should all be fresh.
I prefer we watch McGreevy go 9, so we don't have to watch the bullpen tonight.
Yeah, that would be nice. Or get some more offense.
That'd be nice.
So that the bullpen doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Dustin May is on track for tomorrow.
Right, might be the final start.
Cooling off
Dustin
tomorrow,
May.
too, so it's nice to be outside.
I'm guessing that will be the final start for Dustin May in a Cardinals uniform. That would be my assessment.
Now you're the bringer of doom.
Yeah.
Do you guys disagree?
I don't know. I'm
I don't know if he's-
50-50
yeah, I
on
don't
it.
know
I
if
don't
he's
know that
gonna
I'm
be traded.
as, guaranteeing it happening.
At this point, I feel like there's so many teams that need starting pitching that Dustin May is going to be traded.
We're one of those teams.
Matthew's going to be here, let's be real.
Well, are we sure about that? Bryson Moss was supposed to be here,
Here's
man.
a question for you. Dobbins being sent down today for an extra bullpen arm?
No.
Yeah or nay?
No.
I think Dobbins sticks around because they're not going to, if they do that.
Yeah, you wasted 4 games to keep him on the roster.
His face. I can't. I hope it happens just so I can see
Yeah, that's
McCabe
true.
in the
They're
office
not going to
tomorrow.
do that.
I wish it
They're
would have
not
happened
gonna
when
do
we were on air versus when we're off air.
Will you
That's not going to
FaceTime
be
me
as
when,
fun.
when it
Yeah,
happens?
we take a picture of your
I
face.
will do an immediate reaction from my car if that happens.
Yeah, but I want to be on the FaceTime with you.
Yeah, I don't want the immediate
I don't
reaction
want to watch
video.
it on Twitter.
Yeah, I want to see
you
a
can
picture.
do that later.
Send us an immediate reaction.
the worst.
FaceTime us because I'd like to see your face. Maybe some tears.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. We will be back with you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's next here on 101 ESPN.